Leaving Sacramento, Sacramento, there I go. Leaving Sacramento,
wow, this is great.
Sacramento, there I go. They got some fat ass women there, and Rock is gonna just say no.
What a song! Just say no.
Well, I might take a plane, I might take a train. How do you people live here? You must be insane. I'm leaving Sacramento. Sacramento, I won't stay. Check this out, check this out.
Check it out.
But I'll be sure to come back when the Lakers beat the Kings in May. I'll be sure to come back when the Lakers beat the Kings in May.
Man, that's number one with a bullet.
Hello and welcome to the debut show of Bushby and Thompson's Wrestling Adventure, where myself, Martin Bushby, and Andrew Thompson will be joined by special guests each month to look back at a show from wrestling's past. And Andrew, I mean, you must be one of the busiest guys in wrestling journalism. I'm glad I've finally got you locked down to do this podcast every month.
Man, I'm glad to do the podcast. I'm looking forward to this. When you first approached me about the idea, I was already on board. Looking forward to reviewing these throwback shows, man, and of course talking with some special guests. And you know, as I'm sure you were about to segue to, we have a very special guest today. Somebody that's near and dear to the both of us and the whole post wrestling family.
Oh yeah, we've got the perfect guest lineup for this first show. He's post wrestling fans will know him as the host of the Rocky Maivia Picture Show and the co-host of Keep It 2000. Yeah, we're delighted to welcome the most electrifying man in all of post wrestling and all around raconteur, Nate Milton. Nate, thanks for joining us.
What's going on, brothers? Yes, it is great to be here, Brother Bushby. And of course, I have to tip my cap to my podcast nephew, the youngest in charge, Andrew Thompson. And you know, even though, like, all those niceties aside, fellas, I see what you're doing here. Like, I can see through the veneer. You know, y'all just brought me on here to pop this rating for the debut episode of Bushby and Thompson. But I'm not mad at you. I'm here. I'm down to talk about this show this week, and I'm gonna sprinkle my own little razzle dazzle on y'all's episode. So I think we're gonna have a good time today.
Oh, you seem to have fetching you on for the first show to pop a rating, yeah, with that transparent.
You have become our undertaker, Nate, for post wrestling. Whenever we need to pop the good rating, we're gonna go ahead and bring you back. One day contract.
You know, I'm a special attraction. I come in, I take the spot of the full timers. You know, part timer coming in here with the big shoes, and you know, I'm the draw. You know, I got my own personal dressing room here at the podcast studio, but it's all good. It's all love. We gonna make a good show for the people, and I feel like you know, this is gonna be a great vehicle for you two gentlemen. So I'm interested to hear how this partnership continues to grow.
Thanks for that. We really appreciate it. So, I mean, the show today is going to see us travel back 17 years to 2003 and look at probably one of the most underrated, in my opinion, WrestleManias of all time, WrestleMania 19. I mean, before we get into the wrestling part, Nate, I wanted to ask you any sort of like memories of 2003 that jump out at you.
I mean, it was a simpler time. You know, it was a simpler time, Martin. Back when we didn't have to watch our backs because of what might be going on in the world, speaking on a socio-political type of platform. But, you know, I'm not trying to get into all that today. I'm sure somebody just turned this on to, you know, get away from the problems in 2020. So let's think about what was going on in 2003. And for me, I feel like that was an interesting time, like not only in the world, but in pop culture. You know, in my life personally, it would have been a few years since I would have returned to the States from living in Japan. I feel like at that time I would have been back in Virginia. I would have been back in Newport News, working at the TV station and trying to stay out of trouble, Andrew. But you know, back then I was probably about, you know, your age right now, maybe even a little bit younger. And so, you know how hard sometimes, even when you're not looking for the trouble can find you. Trouble got that GPS.
Well, I don't think you were based in Japan.
Yeah. For a few years, my father was stationed in Okinawa. So, I was over in Japan for a little bit. I worked at a TV station on the base.
Wow.
And that was a really interesting experience because it was like a really kind of a DIY thing. Like we had a chief investor who provided, money for equipment and things of that nature. But really, like there were only like 5 full-time people on the staff. Everybody else, myself included, was kind of like a volunteer that, got perks here and there. And so, we had a like a evening talk show, like our own version of the Tonight Show called Okinawa PM. I was the host of School Days, which basically was me it was literally me and a camera and a microphone. And I would go and talk to various students, whether, they were in high school athletics back there, or they were in like the drama program, or they were achieving well academically. It'd just be me and my little camera, my little tripod, and I just do interviews. And, we had another show, Sports Talk, which was the least creative named sports show in the history of sports shows. And, it was a live call-in show that we did from the studio. And so, like it wasn't glamorous, Martin, but it was fun. And I think that 2 or 3 years I was over there working at that station was like a good foundation for a lot of what I was able to do further on down the road in my life. And so, that was like late 90s. And then, like you were talking about 2003, when we get there, it's like trying to figure out, okay, like now I've been back in the States for a couple of years now. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And so, it was a really interesting time, not only in the wrestling world, but in my world too, sir.
Wow, yeah.
That's cool as hell.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't doing anything nowhere near as exciting as that in 2003. I was just chefing, earning decent money, just pissing it all up the wall, basically. I think, like you said, trying to figure out what you wanted to do with your life. Andrew, I mean, just to take people behind the scenes here, I'm looking at a picture of you on your Skype in your school uniform, little Andrew here. I'm guessing this isn't far from you in 2003.
I honestly think that was like, you know what? I think that probably may have been, it probably was 2002 or 2003, but in 2003, I was in first grade, 7 years old. And getting the.
I seriously overestimated your age, Andrew. I was about your age back in 2003. Like, I was a grown ass man with a job in the car.
Yeah, man. To 2003, that was that. I had no worries in the world. Just coming home, making sure I wasn't acting a fool in school, and staying out of trouble and collecting all the WWE DVDs. Man, that's what I was doing.
So was wrestling on your radar at that point at 7 years old?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I was always interested in wrestling, but the only thing I knew I would say around that year specifically was WWE and TNA. And then, I guess as the years went on, I kind of found out about that there was wrestling that existed outside of that bubble. So I've always been interested in seeking out outside stuff, but I was just locked in on WWE. So the whole year of 2003 for me, I remember it vividly, specifically speaking about WWE.
Well, if you'll indulge me, to set the scene a bit more, because Nate mentioned a bit about pop culture in 2003, and in the music, we had 50 Cent in the Club, J-Lo and LL Cool J, All I
Classic
Have, Beyonce,
Classic.
Crazy in Love, Evanescence, Bring Me to Life, Chingy, Right There, and Avril Lavigne, I'm With You, some of the biggest singles of the year. Andrew, what was blasting out the stereo in the Thompson household? Were you a Chingy fan back in the day?
Man, I was that 50 Cent in the Club. Everybody loved that. So I don't know. I had no business listening to that song.
You can't even get in the club.
but yeah, man. I one thing I like, growing up specifically was my folks. I don't really think they kind of, they didn't hide me from much. So I was exposed to a lot early. In a good way, I would say. I was watching movies I really don't think I was supposed to be watching. Like How High. Watching this stuff at a young age, man, and just learning the stuff that I shouldn't probably have been learning and taking that back to school. So but specifically songs like that, but pretty much all the big time songs that everybody was listening to back in the day. That was it? I always liked that Evanescence song.
Yo,
I
I was just about to say, Andrew, like that Evanescence song, like launched 1,000 movie trailers where the white heroine, like she was down on her luck, Martin Bushby, and she had to get up, and there was a training montage. And I'm specifically thinking of Jennifer Garner and Elektra, and she is fighting, and she is training, and the skills that she learned through this montage brought her to life.
And as everybody probably knows, when they look at the title, we're reviewing WrestleMania 19, and Martin mentioned Evanescence. That was the theme song for No Way Out 2003, which was the pay-per-view before WrestleMania 19, I think.
Yeah, that song was everywhere. I don't know about you, Nate, but reeling back all those songs and thinking that they were 17 years ago, they feel like 5 years ago to me. I'm feeling really old thinking about all those songs.
Yeah, time flies, man. And for me, like at that time period, I'm sure, even though I want to say the record came out in the fall, if I'm remembering correctly. Okay, now I know exactly where I was. Yep, because Speaker Box Love Below came out in August or September of 2003, and that was my jam. A big Outkast fan, and so at that time I would have been working at Channel 13, which is it is our ABC affiliate, if I'm not mistaken. And I was a cameraman and a floor director. I worked at the morning newscast, which meant like the morning news come on at 4:00 in the morning, Andrew Thompson. So I had to be at the studio at least by 2:30 in the morning. And so my schedule, like I stay on these waiting hours anyway, where I'm up all hours of the night like Batman patrolling the city. And so like if I had to be somewhere at 2:30, it's an hour drive, which means I got to leave at least by 1. So I have to be up. I'm getting up for work at midnight. And, going to work, doing the news, morning newscast, staying through the noon newscast, so that ends at 1:00, which means it takes me another hour to drive back home. I get home around 2:30, 3:00, have dinner, watch TV or play video games or work out or whatever. And then 7, 8:00, I'm going to bed to wake up at 12:00. So that I did that for about a good year. And it was a thankless job because nobody cares about the PAs, nobody cares about the production crew. It's all about the anchors. But it was a good job, man, with good people. And like I think Outkast got me through a lot of long drives, man. Just Andre 3000 talking about Andre 3000 talking about don't fall for her ice cold. Don't fall for her. Like that got me through a lot of them drives over the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, it was definitely a classic album. Wasn't that their last album as well? Have they done anything together since then? Yeah, that was their last album as a group. Even though that was kind of the split. We had the Love Below, we had Speaker Box. It's an interesting album. Like I feel like if you combine the two albums, like there's a really good 10-song album in the midst of all those like 25 songs between the two of them. And then like Big Boy went on to Big Boy's still making music. Andre is like a black tooth fairy where he just pops up, or a black Easter bunny. He pops up like once a year, gives you that goodness, and then disappears for another year. You don't hear nothing from Three Stacks for 364 days, and then he'll pop up on somebody's verse. Or I think last year he dropped like a 4-track or 5-track instrumental jazz album that nobody asked for. And it's like, okay, I'm glad you're still out here creating stuff though. Yeah. Well, moving on from music and on to some of I think it was a big sequels year this year. We had Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Finding Nemo, Matrix Reloaded, Bad Boys 2, and Terminator 3. So a big year for sequels in 2003. But on to what your remit, Nate. The Rock only had one movie out this year. His fourth in total was The Rundown. Fairly sure I've seen it many moons ago, but there's The Rundown. Was that on your radar as being one of The Rock's better films?
Yeah, in terms of his early work, and yes, if you want to check out that episode, I believe it was myself and maybe Brent Chittenden, maybe Chris from LA that did The Rundown, maybe Brian Mann, I'm not sure. But yeah, The Rundown was an interesting film where you had that moment where Arnold Schwarzenegger literally passed the torch from the action star of the 80s to what people thought at the time was going to be the action star of the 2000s. And, Sean William Scott did his thing. You had Christopher Walken playing the bad guy. He was the top heel in the territory. Rosario Dawson was in it. It was a good little movie, but obviously what we saw in the next, 15 years or so was that Dwayne Johnson was more than just an action guy, and he's been able to parlay that into becoming the biggest movie star on the planet and the owner of the XFL. So, things are coming up rocky.
Man, I was supposed to be on the rundown review, but I got Planet 13. So I'm holding that against you forever.
I mean, look. I picked that one specifically for you, Andrew, because I saw in my mind little 7-year-old Andrew Thompson in his Sunday morning Easter suit going to school, ready to come home and watch Planet 51 directed by the great Jorge Blanco. I did that for you, brother.
I respect it, man. I respect it.
Any movies speak out to you from 2003 then, Andrew? Finding Nemo. I kind of imagine that's around your age range.
I was trying not to give Nate the satisfaction of saying Finding Nemo because I was going to prove his whole point right about the Planet 13. But I was one of the Finding Nemo people.
And I know you two are like massive sports fans, so just before we get into the wrestling, because 2003 we had Roger Federer winning his first Grand Slam title, Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, Marlins won the World Series, Arsenal won the Premier League, not losing a single game, and Detroit Pistons won the NBA title by trouncing the Lakers 4-1, and a certain LeBron James won Rookie of the Year. Eventful year in sports. I remember at the time that Detroit team pretty much surprising everyone that year, because it was that dream team the Lakers has assembled, wasn't it? It was like Kobe, Shaq, Gary Payton, Karl Malone, and it also fell apart for him as charted in Phil Jackson's cracking book, the last season, I think it was called.
Yeah, that was an interesting year in sports because it felt like the transition where a lot of the dynasties of the 90s were starting to fade away, and we weren't quite yet to, where LeBron would start to take over, or, the Patriots would just go on this annoying run, for the next decade. And so, like you look at that Pistons team with Chauncey Billups, like they had no reason to beat that Lakers team, but, it shows you what a team can do versus a group of great individuals. You got to play together as a team. Baseball, I'm thinking that's the second Marlins World Series run, because the Marlins are a weird team. Like, they've been terrible except for like 3 or 4 times in their entire history, and that's when they brought in just these mercenaries. Brought in these free agents. They TNA'd it. They brought in everybody they could. They used to work for the WWE, and they was hot for like 2 or 3 months, and then it just fell apart. And that's how the Marlins were. Like, we bringing in all these high-priced free agents, and we're going to win a World Series, but there's no connection to the team, Martin, because that these guys aren't going to be around next year. So it was a weird time to be a Marlins fan. I guess any time is a weird time to be a Marlins fan because they're just a weird franchise. I don't think they've ever really fit in Miami, but at least they've got 2 championships.
And NBA Live 2004 was hot that year when it first dropped. They always dropped. They always dropped the game 1 year before.
Yeah.
One year before and I remember that I was being so fascinated with the graphics, and then like looking back, those were some of the worst graphics ever. But like, it's just crazy how things have elevated since 17 years ago. It's crazy to see how far things have come.
Who was on the cover of that one?
I think Vince Carter.
Ah, okay.
Was that Nets Vince Carter?
No, I think that was I think it had to be, honestly. 2000 NBA Live 2004. I for sure think that was
that period where he'd fallen out with the Raptors, hadn't he? And then he was sort of like moving on. It might have been, I think 2002, 2003 might have been his last season in Canada.
Yeah, I think about it. Yeah, he was on the cover of 2004 with the Raptors, but he had to get traded.
I was on the other side. I was on the other side. I was on the other team back at that time, Andrew, because I was a Sega Dreamcast man.
Oh,
brother.
okay.
So I was on that Dreamcast, and we had, we didn't have the EA games on the Dreamcast because it wasn't like that back then. So we had the 2K games. So I was playing ESPN basketball 2K3 with Allen Iverson on the cover. That's what I was getting down with.
You were ahead of your time, sir, because look where we at now. All everybody plays 2K.
Yeah, man. The greatest football game, it came out a year later. The greatest NFL game ever created, Martin Bushby. To this day, ESPN 2K, NFL 2K5.
Wow, I didn't even know that was a thing.
They've never been able to create a game like that. Like, it had actual ESPN presentation. Like, you can put it in right now, and the graphics are going to look a little dated just because of technology. But the way they integrated the halftime shows, and they had highlights of other games that you wasn't even playing, Martin Bushby. So, like, say I'm starting a franchise with the Falcons, and it's Sunday, and we're playing the Raiders, and I'm up by 12 at halftime, and they go to the halftime show. Now let's take a look at what's going on with the Bengals and the Saints, and they showing me a highlight of a game that wasn't even played.
Wow,
like that's amazing, and ESPN was like, EA Sports was like, we can't even compete with that. So instead of trying to make a better game, I think they took inspiration from Vince McMahon. Instead of trying to make a better product, let's just buy everybody else out. And they were like, instead of trying to make a better Madden game, let's just get the exclusive rights to the NFL. And they basically shut down NFL 2K before it even really got started.
I'll have to check that one out. I'll have to go back. I know, retro games are becoming quite the thing now, aren't they? Obviously we've had the redo of the Tony Hawk's games and a couple of Resident Evil ones. Yeah, perhaps I'll have to do a redo of that one.
Yeah, it was like they had a mode where it was like a first-person football, and you act like they showed you, and then all of a sudden, like, you're running on the field, and then you go inside the helmet, and it was a weird game mode, like it didn't quite work, Martin. But just the fact that back in 03, 04, they were like, let's try something different. Let's put you it was like a VR deal almost, where like you're inside the helmet and you're making the calls. Like it didn't quite work, but the fact that they were trying all these different things was cool. Like you had a crib, like you got to have a pinball machine. Wow. And a jukebox that played, snippets of the songs on the soundtrack, and you had to listen to the same 5 AC Alone songs in a row. But that was okay because it was something different, Martin Bushby, and that's why I feel like you either innovate or you invest, and EA said we can't innovate, we can't create, so let's just buy our competition out and put them out of business. So again, it's bringing us to Vincent Kennedy McMahon, I guess. Vince McMahon is the EA Sports of professional wrestling.
He sure is. So on to WWE then in 2003, because it's quite a funny year for them, I think. Obviously, we had the brand split a year earlier with the first draft happening in March of 2002, and then I want to get your guys' thoughts on the original brand split. We had the separate pay-per-views with only the two brands appearing on the Big 5 pay-per-views, and they seemed to really stick to it for that first year, I thought, Andrew.
Yeah, I definitely think this was probably one of the brighter things that WWE did as far as this 2000, that early 2000s era, was having this brand split, because I feel like it really gave people the opportunity to shine that probably wouldn't have had that chance to shine. Like I kind of relate that back to the 2016 Smackdown, like when we had people I think people were very fond of Becky Lynch and the Alexa Blisses and the Chad Gable and Jason Jordans of the world, but then when they kind of got separated and everybody was most of them were put on SmackDown, they really got to shine it, and that's when their fan bases grew.
Yeah, can agree with that. But I mean, Nate, when they did that original brand split, obviously everyone was crying for it to come back, weren't they, when they got rid of it, and now everyone's not so happy with it. But what was your original thoughts when they split the brands and made and it was almost like all the pay-per-views they were saying, oh, this is presented by SmackDown or presented by Raw, and they made quite the effort to make them two separate companies.
Well, yeah, it made sense back then because you still got this pretty bloated roster, because we're in the aftermath of WCW being bought out, and TNA and ROH aren't really viable competitors at the time. But so you got all this talent, and this is before 3-hour Raw. So it's like we only got, so much TV time. So it made sense to split the rosters and, like Andrew said, give people a chance to shine. And then the other thing that made it something that people look back fondly on is the fact that they actually took it seriously, right? Like there were trades, like there were storyline reasons for people to show up on other shows, as opposed to now when people can just show up whenever they want to, basically. And it's pretty much a joke in terms of like an actual split between the two companies. Like they actually, as opposed to now, like in recent times where the only time they get serious about the brand split is around Survivor Series so everybody can put on their little stupid shirts. Back then, they took it seriously, for the entire year, even going as far as this is, No Way Out, presented by Snickers and Smackdown. It's like, okay, I can get behind this. This is a blue brand show. But they kind of lost their way after a while. But that original brand split was something that I feel like was necessary, and it also helped elevate a lot of talent that might not have gotten a chance otherwise.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. They seem to like half-arse it now, don't they? Whereas before they seem to like be quite into it. Because this was, I think this was the first WrestleMania as well of the WWE era after getting the F out, I think, in 2002. I mean, you mentioned the bloated roster there. As far as rosters go going into WrestleMania 19, this must be one of the most stacked of all time. You had Austin, Rock, Shawn Michaels, Jericho, Undertaker, Brock, Angle, Hogan, Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, and then you had Batista and John Cena sort of like bubbling under. But even saying that, though, I mean, TV ratings were down dramatically from your peaks of 2000 and 2001. I think the average in 2000 was 5.8 to 2003, which was 3.7. I mean, even with this stacked roster, Andrew, I mean, can you put your finger in this downturn in business for WWE? I mean, people just got bored of wrestling because it was no longer the sort of like hot pop culture thing it was a few years before.
Yeah, I can't even possibly begin to even put pinpoint something like exactly why that rating probably dropped. But like, can you imagine? Like, you just so 3.7 or 3.5 or just having 3 point whatever million people tuned into a pro wrestling product back then was the normal thing. Now, can you imagine that today? Like what that would do for a wrestler? 'Cause like now it seems like 1.5, 1.4, like that's the big thing right there. At least trying to get over a million. Like you got SmackDown right now averaging 2 point something, and I know Raw is averaging like around the 1.8 range, and we got NXT and AEW inching up on a million. Like, can you imagine like now? Like I just can't even begin to like I don't think that a 3 would even be plausible nowadays. I just don't think it would happen.
Well, the real question, Martin, is what was Raw in 2003 doing with that 18 to 49 demographic, right? Because that's all that really matters when you look at it. But in all seriousness, I think, to Andrew's point about why was there a drop-off, it's easy to explain for me. And this is a product, nephew, of just living through the time.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between 03 and, say, 96, 97, 98 is that there's no WCW. And there's a bunch of people that never came back to watching wrestling after WCW folded, right? Like they might have tuned in the first week or the first month or so after WCW was purchased by the WWF, but eventually they're like, this isn't my brand. This isn't what I signed up for, so I'm just not going to watch. I'm going to watch UFC, or I'm going to watch more traditional sports, or I'm going to make it a Blockbuster night because Blockbuster was still a thing back in 2003. And so like I feel like, yeah, like those are great numbers by today's standards, but when you compare it to the height in the mid to late 90s of where pro wrestling was, it's like, yeah, they never figured out a way, and by they I mean Vince McMahon and the powers that be within the WWE. They never figured out a way to entice those WCW viewers to come on board, and so that's like still to this day, Martin, one of the biggest missed opportunities, because there's a couple million fans out there, maybe even more, that never got back into wrestling, even though they were, 2 or 3 years earlier, they were so into the product.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, were you watching like week to week around this point? Were you watching Raw and SmackDown?
I was watching, but not as intently as I had been a few years earlier. I was a WCW fan back in the day. Like, that was my brand. But I would also, switch between Raw and Nitro during the commercials. But in 2003, like, there were people that I would follow, people that I was invested in. But I wasn't as much watching SmackDown and Raw on a week-to-week basis. I was trying to give, TNA a chance at the time. And TNA is like that bad dad that always does you wrong. But like, I'm gonna come to your baseball game next week. I promise I'll be at the baseball game. He don't show up to the baseball game, but then he shows up 3 hours later at the house drunk with a bike. Like, see, I told you I'd be here. Like, that ain't the same thing, Dad. Thank you for the bike, Dixie Carter, but it ain't the same thing.
What an analogy. What about you? Andrew? Who was some of your favorites in 2003?
I was about to say that was quite the analogy from Brother Nate right there. But
that's what gets the ratings. That's getting the 3.7.
But 2003, man, I was tuned in, man. I ain't had nothing else to do, so I was locked in.
And what were some of your memories of watching the show at the time? Just before we get into the show itself, I seem to remember I was too tight to pay for any sports packages over here, and one of my friends had the full package, so I used to go around to his on a Sunday night, because obviously they're showing quite early in the morning over here in the UK, and that used to be a traditional thing for us to all gather around at my friend's house and watch these with a couple of beers and what have you. And I do remember this being a good show, but I don't think I've watched it since. Obviously, I rewatched it for doing this review now, but I've not watched it since, like I would say, WrestleMania 17 or something like that. But Andrew, did you stay up and watch this when it was on originally?
Man, I didn't see this show until a year after it happened, because my mom Dukes wasn't paying $50 for me to sit up and watch no wrestling. She wasn't going. She wasn't going for that. So we waited till that thing came out in Target or one of these something like that, and then we went to go get it. And I swear I replayed this thing. Like, this show is like burned in my brain. Like, I remember this thing like vividly from how many times I watched it on DVD on the PlayStation 2.
This would have been one where I would have, I didn't watch it live that night, but I certainly think that this is probably something I would have ordered on Netflix, like when Netflix was still like a DVD service.
Oh, yeah.
This would have been one thing, like it probably came out like 6 months later. Wait.
Time out. Netflix was a thing back then?
Yeah, Netflix was a DVD service. So
what was this?
So sit down, nephew. Let me tell you how things used to be. So back in the day, instead of going to the Blockbuster to rent movies, you could sign up for a subscription to Netflix. And what Netflix would do is you could sign up for the basic plan for $8.99. I remember the prices. Or the premium package for like $15.99. And the basic plan, you got one DVD. They send it to you. You watch it. You send it back. They send you another one. On the premium package, you could have up to 2 or 3 DVDs out at a time. And so, like, I got the premium package, and I would always order like one movie, I'd order like one UFC, and I'd order one WWE show. And they would send you the DVDs, and you watch them, you send them back. And then eventually Netflix moved into streaming. I want to say like maybe 5-6 years after Netflix started, they moved into the streaming. But even now, there's still some folks out there getting Netflix DVDs. So yeah, Netflix started on that DVD side. They cut into Blockbuster's territory, and Blockbuster never recovered.
Look at that, out here teaching a young brother on the wrestling podcast. Ain't that something?
There was so much joy, because you had to go in and Netflix on Netflix.com and set up your queue. And so it was serious business, Andrew, because there were some movies that you wanted to watch, but they were high priority because everybody wanted to watch them. Like, it was whatever new Will Smith movie came out, you knew you might not get that on the first try. So you had to have a good backup. So like, say Ali was the number one movie on my queue. I knew I might not get Ali, so I had to put something good behind it. So I put like a Martin Lawrence movie or a Dave Chappelle movie, WrestleMania 2003, a TNA, like every now and then they had TNA or ROH DVD sprinkled in there, a UFC, and then some concert like a Prince DVD. And so it's like I might not get Ali, but out of those 10 movies I put on my list, I'm gonna get at least 1 or 2 good movies. And so yeah, Netflix, like everybody out there, like that can remember the joy of getting that little Netflix envelope, and you open it up, and then you open up the little cardboard, because they had to put the cardboard in there, Andrew, so the DVD didn't get scratched up. You open up that little cardboard, and it's like, I got the full first season of the Justice League in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got SummerSlam '88 in my hands, and it was a magical experience.
We had a similar service to that over in the UK called Love Film. I think Amazon bought them eventually, and they tried continuing that DVD service for a while, and then they just closed it down. But I remember the last one I got off Love Film before my subscription expired was Phenomenal 2, the best of AJ Styles in TNA.
Yeah.
A DVD that I still have in the wallet. I'm looking at it right now on my shelf next to my computer. So yeah, I don't want to.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I too have a couple DVDs that probably should have been returned. I got Tropic Thunder that probably should have been returned to the Netflix people. I can say it now because Netflix doesn't care about me. They're out here making movies and stuff. Tropic Thunder is sitting on my shelf right now that should have been returned. I got at least 2 Biggest Loser workout DVDs that should have been returned to the Netflix people. And I think I do have like Best of the X Division somewhere around the place that should have been returned to Netflix. So yeah, like that was good times, Andrew. You don't know, you don't know nothing about that young fella.
They had the full TNA collections on there as well. It was perfect. But just before we get into WrestleMania,
there's something great, like not to keep us going down this Netflix tangent, but there's something great about physical media. Like I get like it's cool having everything available digitally to stream, but there's something about being able to hold a thing and put the thing in your DVD player. And another thing is like DVD commentaries. Like I used to love watching the movies and then listening to the commentaries, particularly anybody that hasn't heard it. Tropic Thunder might have the best DVD commentary ever because Robert Downey Jr. is doing it in character for the whole commentary. And it's like, stuff like that you don't really get on these streaming sites because why would I pay extra money to have somebody do a commentary when it's not putting money in my pocket? So shout out to all the physical media out there, all these DVDs collecting dust.
Oh, I used to love a DVD commentary. Fuck that for everybody though, Nate, was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think when they asked him to do one for Total Recall, he was like, why would I do this for free? I want some payment for it. And then all the other actors were like, wait, we've been doing these DVD commentaries for free, and Arnie's out here getting paid for it. So that kind of like ruined DVD commentaries for everybody because the studios didn't want to pay for them anymore. So thanks a lot, Arnie. But anyway, moving on to WrestleMania 19. And rather than go through all the Raws and Smackdowns that preceded this Mania, I thought we'd go through each match and then have some background behind the matches as we talk through each match. But someone who is noticeable before we get into the show itself from his absence on this show is John Cena. Obviously, the rumor and innuendo is that he was going to do a rap battle against either Fabulous or Jay-Z. I mean, thinking about that now, a rap battle between Jay-Z and John Cena obviously get a lot of mainstream press these days, but it just looked bizarre in 2003, I think. I don't think either Fabulous or Jay-Z were quaking in the boots going up against John Cena. I don't know about you, Andrew.
Man, you know what? But before I even answer this, I'm gonna let our guest tackle that one first because I got to hear Nate's thoughts about this. Nate, what would you think about the possibility of you seeing WrestleMania 19 with either Fabulous or Jay-Z in a rap battle with one Mr. John Cena who went on to release his own album?
I think it would have been a great move for the WWE. I'm not sure like it's a good move for Fabulous or Jigga, just because it's like what do they have to gain other than a check? Which money is nice, but it's like most of what your image is in the rap game. I don't know if you know about this rap game, Martin Bushby, but your image is very important. It's like having a wrestling character, and so like somewhere along the way it kind of changed because we let Rick Ross, for some reason, get off being a correctional officer, but acting like he's a drug kingpin. But I'm not going to speak on that right now. But I feel like Jay-Z in particular at that time would have had, like, you would have had to pay that man so much money to kind of quote unquote lower himself to show up on this circus. But like, because I love John Cena. Like, I think John Cena is one of the most underrated performers of his time. You know, it's not his fault that the company, I think, didn't utilize him in the best possible way at all times. And fans, older fans in particular, kind of felt like he was getting shoved down everybody's throat. But I think John Cena is one of the best workers that the company's ever employed. But that being said, him and Jay-Z in the middle of the ring, while I would have enjoyed it now, just looking back on it, it would have been like there would have been no reason for Jay-Z to just be in the middle of the ring and Safeco feel like, I'm sorry, what you want me to do? What about you, Andrew? Like how do you think that would have turned out, man?
I do not think it would have turned out. I mean, you know what? I'm not gonna say that. I think it would have been entertaining. You know, I definitely think it would have been something that people would have been interested in. Like, much like you said, I don't think it would have done well by either Fabulous or Jay-Z for their image outside of professional wrestling. I think it would have definitely sort of endeared them more to the professional wrestling audience, but I don't think it would have really helped them in the rap game. I think people kind of would have been clowning them about that, and I probably still would have been something like to this very day that people probably would have pulled up. You know, whenever they did something crazy in the media, they'd be like, "Oh, you look at you did this rap battle with John Cena," and then it would have been worse if John Cena had better balls than they did. Yep. That would have just solidified everything right there. But like, I mean, just on that, I think it would have been entertaining.
Like, I think for that to work, Martin, it would have had to been somebody like maybe either on the come up or maybe a little bit past their prime. Mm. Like Jay-Z at that time in particular, like, was too big for that spot. But like, if you've got somebody like honestly, if we're being real about it, Eminem would have been the guy. Mm. Like, M would have been the dude. Marshall Mathers versus John Cena. That would have been the battle that people need to see, but he wouldn't have did it either.
Battle of like the Great White Hope. That would have been crazy.
But yeah, like, it would have had to probably been a rapper on the downslope, like Vanilla Ice. And I don't want to say this to disparage this man, but yeah, Vanilla Ice, MC Hammer, like Tone Loc.
I was going to ask you, did Vanilla Ice end up working with John Cena like a couple years, like in 2007, 2006, when he was on Raw? No, that was Kevin Federline. That's what
that was Federline. Yeah, Federline.
Did he have a rap career as well, Federline?
Well, he tried.
They brought in so many tangential rappers like Federline. They had that whole angle with Machine Gun Kelly a few years ago.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The only one who seems to like rise above this all, who is untouchable, who can do anything without it being embarrassing or, like you were saying earlier, Nate, about like affecting his image, is Snoop Dogg, really, I think, isn't it?
Man, oh yeah, Snoop is a brand right now. Like, so Snoop can't be touched. Like, I think Wale got off pretty unscathed when he did his thing with the New Day and the Usos. Wiz Khalifa, I don't think took any backlash, but he like Wiz was probably high at the time. No slander, just speaking facts. So he wouldn't have cared one way or the other. But yeah, it's weird, man. You know, Brian Mann and I talked about this a few years ago, back on a little show called Keep It 100, which is about as relevant now as DVDs and Netflix are to you young kids these days. But we talked about kind of the connection between hip hop and pro wrestling, and it's like, yeah, like the audiences for both, you might not think there's a big crossover, but a lot of rap fans like wrestling, and vice versa. And it's like, if Vince and the WWE were a little bit more culturally hip, I think there could have been a way to kind of integrate that, you know, with a character like John Cena.
Mm-hmm. And just to like mention, like, this is just like caught my eye. Like, as I'm sitting here with my computer in front of me, I had looked up and I got this like little shelf of DVDs and stuff like that. And I was looking and I saw I got the WrestleMania 19 video game on Nintendo GameCube that came out I know where that came out in September of that year, 2003. And on the cover we got Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, and it looked like the Rock on the cover. Yeah. And the graphics are horrendous, but
That game. Okay, look, we hijacking the show now, Martin. But have you played that game?
Never.
Okay, see, great. I didn't have a GameCube back in the day, Andrew, but my homeboy did. I had a Game Station. It was a GameCube on one side, a PlayStation on the other side. I just cut them together and put them together. That's a joke from Malibu's Most Wanted for anybody that wants to watch that on DVD tonight. But the story, like there wasn't a story mode, Martin. They had revenge mode. And basically
oh my goodness.
What revenge mode was you as a wrestler, right? And Vince McMahon fired you unjustly. And so Stephanie McMahon comes to you with this deal like, hey, I want to help you take down my daddy, and I'm going to help you get back into WWE. And so you're going through these missions like beating up wrestlers as security guards, and I think at one point, Andrew, you had to like stop a shipment of WWE goods from getting to the arena.
Yeah, Brad, you're right, Brad. Yes, that's it. I'm like reading the right, but that's exactly what it is, Brad.
You had to stop like the shipment, and then finally, once you do all this stuff, once you kind of wreak all this havoc, Martin, you get to face Vince McMahon at the main event of WrestleMania.
Of course you do.
Ridiculous.
That's every wrestler's dream, isn't it? To face Vince at WrestleMania. Yeah.
No, that like the way Nate described it, that is like exactly accurate, but that's exactly what it says in the pamphlet. And then at the end, you get to negotiate your contract with Vince. That's what it says. Words to the wise: be careful when negotiating with McMahon's.
Because that's what every kid wants when they play in a video game. They want contract negotiations.
Yeah. I've got to find if there's a version of that online or something that I can have a go at. That sounds absolutely hilarious. Now, I was just still playing when they moved on to SmackDown v Raw at this time, or was it SmackDown Know Your Role, just bring it, or whatever.
Oh man, that game was amazing.
What was this year? Was 2003? That was Here Comes the Pain, right?
Yeah.
Yes, with Lesnar on the cover. Yeah, that game was amazing.
It was. That like I'm not gonna like around like I would say from that 2002 to 2009 stretch WWE, they had really good video games like the Know Your Role and the Here Comes the Pain and the first SmackDown versus Raw. Like they did really good with their video game series.
Like to this day, I can still remember the draft scene because it's Ric Flair versus Vince McMahon.
Yep.
And Linda's like, tonight we're gonna have the draft. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H are ineligible. And that one scene, Martin, where Lance Storm and Christian get drafted to the same show if they do on your game, and they either hug if they get drafted to the same show or if they get drafted to separate brands, like the dejection on virtual computer Lance Storm's face when he realizes that the Un-Americans have been split up. It's magical.
Someone needs to send that to Lance Storm these days and get his reaction to it.
I'm having so many flashbacks doing this podcast from these video games and WWE 2003. Man, I'm about to love doing this podcast, man. It's about to be a good time.
Oh yeah, definitely. But on to the show now. We're in Safeco Field in Seattle, obviously home of the Mariners, and WWE not usually a fan of using these baseball stadiums for shows, are they? But I thought it worked really well for him. The set, though, I wanted to get into that. I thought it was a bit of a mess. I mean, obviously, the past couple of years, especially the most recent New Orleans one and the one they had in Orlando a couple of years ago looked spectacular. But, I mean, Andrew, what were your thoughts of this set here? I thought it all just like a bunch of metal thrown together with no sort of personality or any kind of thought put into it.
Yeah, I like the set actually. I don't know,
really?
But I like the way I like the aesthetic of it, and just like I like the shot that they got from like at the beginning of the show, they had this wide shot from like back in the stadium, and like you could just see the entire set, and I just like the way it lined up with everything, and like the way the ramp was put, like it was like kind of a curve with the ramp. Like I always liked the set and the stage setup for this show. I don't know why, it was just it just popped to me.
I always liked the idea of having wrestling in baseball stadiums, like even going back to like the world class days, with Ric Flair and Kerry Von Erich fighting in the middle of the infield. Like it's always a good look. And so like I didn't have a problem with them going to Safeco, but I think when you talk about the set, like it's not terrible, but it just, to me, it doesn't, like it just kind of feels like, we talked about video games. It feels like this would have been the set they used in a video game. Because it's very it's easily identifiable without being overly complicated and complex like the sets we get today. Like in particular, I'm thinking about I want to say WrestleMania in Levi Stadium where they had that long rampway.
Mm.
The Sting Triple H WrestleMania. Like that was like
2015, 2006, 2015. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was an intricate set, and whereas with this, it's a little bit more simple, but I guess it fits the time because we're, 03, we're kind of in this transitional phase, Martin, where we're in between the Attitude Era and at the beginning of what would become known as, the Ruthless Aggression Era. And so it's this transition. And so I feel like they're still trying to figure out how they want things to look. They're not quite there yet, but it's not the worst set I've ever seen. Go back and look at some of them old WCW Halloween Havoc shows. Like John and Wade recently talked about one. Like them Halloween Havoc shows was something else.
Let me ask you, like, do you think it's interesting how, from this WrestleMania they went to they were at Safeco Field and then they started going back to not I don't want to call it a basic arena, but like 20,000 seat arenas, 15,000 seat arenas for the next, couple of WrestleManias until they eventually got back in the stadiums. You think that's kind of like an interesting thing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because obviously they did 20 in Madison Square Garden because of the nostalgia and the history and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I think after that, that's when they started transitioning. And I think, I don't know, maybe they realized that, they could fill these football stadiums.
Yeah.
Because, what the Houston Astrodome, what was that used for? Was that a football stadium back in the day?
Houston Astrodome, that was a baseball stadium, right?
Astrodome.
Yeah, that Astrodome. Didn't WWE do the Astrodome? What was that in 2019? That was the Balor Brock Lesnar. Was that the Astrodome?
Was that
this year? Well, when Edge came back, was that the Astrodome in Houston? Oh, that was Astro Park. That was her Astro Park in Houston. I'm getting confused. Hold on, wait, because I'm trying to think because I know Royal Rumble this year in 2020.
Was it Minute Maid Park?
Minute Maid Park. That's what it. Yeah, that's what it was. That's it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they seem to be going back to using baseball stadiums, especially for those Royal Rumbles, don't they?
Yeah, for sure.
I like it. Like as a baseball fan and a wrestling fan, like I think there's like if you do the set right, like it can actually enhance the product.
But onto this opening video, I thought it was really, really good. We had lots of wrestlers talking about what the event means to them, lots of training footage. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant package. It reminded me of something that you see sort of like a real big sporting event, like I don't know, maybe sort of like an Olympic style thing. And I thought it was really, really well done. I mean, they're always good at doing these packages, but this one really stood out to me as being a real good one, just because you had a lot of training montage and things like that, and I thought they did really well, because obviously there was no real theme for this year, and then you'd see in subsequent years, they'd have more themes around it, especially when they were in California.
There was a theme. There was a theme, Martin Bushby. There was an amazing tagline to this WrestleMania.
I must have missed that.
WrestleMania 19, quote, "Dare to Dream."
Because I remember they mentioned on the DVD version of the video, I remember they did like that was like one of the things that was on the before you hit play. that was like at the top. That was like at the top of the thing. And you want to know what's crazy? Like I checked out the the first 5 minutes of the WWE Network version, and it was something small, but like just noticed that the theme for the intro was different, for the intro video package. Like it was like this like for the DVD version, it was like this symphony like type thing, and it kind of set the mood. I felt like I was about to go outside and like chase my dream or something like that.
That's one of the things I hate about the network, man. Like I love that we have the network as this place where we can, as fans and then, as podcasters and people that talk about this stuff, we can go back and look at these shows on demand. But it's like, come on, man. All this money you make in Vince McMahon from these TV deals and some of these other international deals that are a little bit less moral that we're not going to speak about, Martin Bushby, like all this money, and you can't pay Jimmy Hart the right to put that music in there. You can't play Metallica for Enter Sandman. All these people that music could have been in here to enhance, because that's half of the presentation is the music and that kind of connection to that time period. So like I really wish, granted I understand like rights and everything, but it's like, come on, man, like it's not like you're hurting for money. You could have put these real songs on these shows on the network.
Well, speaking of music, we have Ashante opening proceedings with a rendition of America the Beautiful. Obviously, that song means a lot more to you guys than me. Ashanti was like a big pop star at the time, and I remember as far as like pop star involvement in WrestleMania, she was quite a big name to have opening the show here.
Ashanti's kind of uncharacteristically modern for Vince McMahon at this time to have opening the show, Andrew. Like, because we've seen in the past, like he's had, kind of these legends, like a Ray Charles, like Gladys Knight. Was it Gladys or Aretha? It was Aretha.
Aretha.
Yeah. James Brown, he's had these legendary figures, but to have somebody current, and
he had,
not Kid Rock current, but like Ashanti current. Like there's a difference in that.
Yeah, I think did he had Carrie Hilson at one of the WrestleManias perform America the Beautiful? It was that the one with the one with Snoop Dogg hosted it, I think.
Yes, that was probably like 100% Snoop saying like, Vince, you need to put my girl Carrie on. You feel me?
I know he had Fantasia. I know John Legend one of the years. Like, he had. I remember I seen one tweet. It was kind of funny. Somebody was like he had more Black WrestleMania hosts than he did World Champions. I don't know. That was
I was like, that's sad but true.
I was like, man, Vince and Man gotta get it together, man.
Yeah, like Vince iTunes playlist is fire. He got Salt and Pepper, Run DMC. But when it comes to booking these world champions, as we'll talk about later on this very show, Martin Bushby, he hadn't been able to pull the trigger.
I cannot wait to get to that match, boy.
We'll get there for sure. And calling the action on this one, we've got Raw, Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross, then SmackDown, Taz and Michael Cole. And first matchup, we had Matt Hardy against Rey Mysterio for the Cruiserweight Championship. Matt's his version 1 character here that had been debuted the year before, and obviously WWF's seen way more in Jeff around this time as the more popular of the two, but I thought version 1 was a fun character with Matt Fax on his entrance packages. He had Matt strongly likes mustard, Matt has never locked his car keys in his car, Matt considers himself a sex symbol, some of the more amusing ones, but obviously we've seen over the years Matt's shown himself as being really good at career reinvention. I mean, were you a fan of Matt Hardy version 1 here, Andrew?
Yeah, I was a fan of Matt version 1. Like you said, I always liked the little Matt facts on the side. They were just like some of the corniest stuff that you would see. And it was actually funny though. But just specifically speaking about like the match overall, like I did want to ask the both of you, Martin. I'll come to you first, and I want to get Nate's thoughts. Like just seeing like the moves that they like, specifically what Rey Mysterio was doing back in the day, and how he was just springboarding off the ropes and doing like, reverse hurricanranas and stuff like that, like spike rondas and stuff like that. Like just seeing this stuff, like, would y'all say, like, where would y'all place on a top 5 list? Where would you put Rey Mysterio as far as greatest of all time? Because like just like me watching this match and like just seeing like where he is now and like how it's crazy because he's in better shape now than he was back then, but still like doing the crazy stuff that he was doing and the innovative stuff that he was doing. Like it's kind of hard not to say Rey Mysterio isn't the greatest of all time, if not one of the greatest of all time.
You mean as far as flyers go?
Just like professional wrestling, just his influence on the business, the in-ring portion of the business.
Yeah, that's true, actually, because they talk to a lot of these sort of, like, quote-unquote WWE superstars these days, and it's always Eddie and Ray, isn't it, that they grew up watching, Even your likes of Sasha Banks and that, they always shout out that Ray and Eddie were the ones. And certainly watching those Nitros back in sort of the late 90s, and he was always the standout in the Cruiserweight division for me.
Yeah, I think that, when you talk about Ray, he's somebody who obviously is one of the greatest cruiserweights or light heavyweights, however you want to classify it, of all time. Like, I think, he's probably top 5 in that category, along with somebody like a Jushin Thunder Liger, obviously. In terms of, like, wrestling overall, Andrew, I think it's kind of difficult because I feel like Ray has been very influential for a very long time, but he's not going to get maybe the credit he deserves or the credit that he's due because that other component, being able to talk somebody into arena was never really quite there. And I don't know if it's just because Ray didn't have that skill set or if, they never really put Ray in a position. Like, because we've seen, like, recently, the stuff with him and Dominic. Like, Ray can actually cut a promo. And I don't know if that's something that Ray had to learn or if it's something that they never really gave Ray the opportunity to do back in the day. So I feel like that kind of hurts Ray a bit when you're talking about, the greatest of all time. Because I'd say what separates Ray from Eddie is not only was Eddie giving you that business bell to bell, but Eddie could talk you into the fight, right? And Ray never had that gear. At least was never allowed to show that gear. So yeah, I'd put Ray up there in the greatest wrestler of all time discussion. But I think he's kind of like, we talk about NBA. Like there's guys like Magic and Michael and LeBron and Bill Russell and Kareem that's on a certain level. And then you got a guy like, let's say Steph Curry or Kevin Durant, who are great, but they're just kind of a level under. And I feel like Ray might just be on that next level under just because they didn't give him the time back in the day to be that total package in terms of a performer.
Yeah. The only, like say, it's just that kind of came to my head because like you always hear, like, especially like in the current WWE product, they always refer to Ray as the greatest luchador of all time. And like when I hear that, I'm always like, why they don't never just say one of the best professional wrestlers of all time? But like, because
that wouldn't fit the story, Andrew. Like we already told you, Randy Orton had the greatest wrestling match of all time earlier this year. So how can Ray be better than Randy Orton?
There it is. Martin, take it away, sir. Take it away, Martin.
He's out here. I think this was the first WrestleMania where he started dressing up and cosplay, and he's obviously in his Daredevil costume, isn't he? This is one of my favourite costumes. I think he's obviously done the Joker and things like that over the years.
This is a fun little match. It felt like a WCW Cruiserweight match almost, though, because they didn't get what they get, like 6 minutes, Andrew?
5, 6 minutes, yeah. It was a good pace.
Like they didn't give a lot of time, but Ray and Matt were able to get, all of their stuff in. And I thought it was entertaining for what it was.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, it's just a hot opener. Like, say, about 5 minutes, they all got the shit in. And Matt won, which apparently was the first time he'd won at WrestleMania up until this point. Bit of a factoid there for you. But, quick opener.
Real quick, like, we can't get through this particular match without going back to Matt Hardy, going back to V1. And talking about how amazing that theme song is. The theme song is great. That theme song got you hyped for a Matt Hardy match.
Oh, yeah. What do you guys think of Shannon Moore? Because he kind of sort of like seconded Matt here, and he was around him, and he was obviously, grew up with Jeff and Matt around the Carolinas, and he never sort of like really got a shot. Do you think he was like just, sort of like a poorer version of the Hardy Boys?
He's kind of.
You go ahead, Nate.
Oh, I was gonna say, Andrew, Shannon Moore, and maybe to a lesser extent, I feel like Hurricane Helms. They kind of, unfortunately, always get compared to the Hardys because they came up together, right? It's like if you remember the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Like you got right. You a good rapper, you got. But you ain't no Method Man. You ain't no Ghostface Killer, brother. And so it's like, I think Shannon Moore is a fine worker, and I think like I'm really high on what Shane Helms did over the years. Like I think that dude is criminally underrated. But when you compare them to Matt and Jeff, it's like like you're not gonna get the same amount of shine just because these two dudes are on another level than you are.
Mm-hmm. And like I was just gonna mention, like I mean, me personally, like I never saw like Shannon Moore as that like I guess leader of the cruiserweight division at the time. Like I remember he did have like that singles run when he had the spike hair in WWE, like when he kind of had that thing going on. But I felt like he always kind of played like a good second to Matt Hardy. Like I even remember like back in the it was the Royal Rumble before this that year, the 2003 year, like he was like, I think Jeff Hardy tried to give Matt a swanton, and like Shannon Moore would come in there and take it for him, and like, you know what I'm saying, like just doing like little sneaky stuff like that. So like that, I thought Shannon Moore was like good for his role in his position, like being a second to Matt Hardy.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't want to get Nate's heart rate up here, but we next had the Miller Catfight girls. I mean, women's evolution. This ain't. I mean, this sort of stuff was all over WWE at the time, weren't it? Be it Diva putting matches or the, I mean, this was definitely pay per play with Miller Lite here. I mean, Nate, this is the first and only time I've seen anything like this in terms of the Miller Lite Catfight girls. But was that a big advertising campaign they had going on in America?
Yeah, like there was so much kind of, I mean, it's funny, like when you talk about 03 to now, it's only been 17 years, but the amount of sexualism that was put into the advertisement back then, whether you're talking about, the Miller Lite Catfight girls or I want to say it was Bud Light who had the commercial back in the day with like they go through a list of everything that men, red-blooded American males like, and then the button at the end of, I like football, I like beer, I like burgers, and twins, and then they just show these two blonde twins in the bikinis, and it's like, yeah, like that was a thing in that time period that has like thankfully kind of faded to the wayside. Like I'm all here for, I get it, man. I'm a brother. I'm a dude with eyes. I like looking at women, but it's like, come on, man. You ain't got to do this to sell me a beer that I was already gonna buy a Miller Lite.
Yeah. I think you summed it up perfectly there.
Now, if you want to do that to sell me some car insurance or some health, so like something I'm not interested in buying, okay, maybe you can put the twins out there with the Geico lizard, and I'll be like, okay, because that's something I really wasn't trying to buy anyway. But I'm buying the beer, I'm buying the burgers, I'm buying this pay-per-view. You didn't need to put that on the screen.
Brilliant. And then after this, we had which was introduced as WWE's favorite band in the world, Limp Bizkit. I mean, they got roundly booed by a lot of the audience.
Yeah, shout out to that man Fred Durst for picking up this check.
Playing The Undertaker out here with Rolling, and that song was everywhere at the time, wasn't it? I know it was like #1 over here in the UK. I used to play it in all the clubs last out and I loved it at the time, but looking back now, Fred Durst, quite the guy here.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not a big fan of musical performances in wrestling, but this is the only time I think it kind of works, Martin, is when you've got the band playing out the wrestler to their theme at a big event. Like, even say what you will about this terrible song, but like I feel it works, even though I don't know why they chose that song with The Undertaker, because it doesn't really fit the character. But hey, it's 2003, man. It's no rules. We in the Wild Wild West right now.
Andrew, we're Limp Bizkit on your radar as a 7-year-old.
Now you wanna know what I always like the Keep On Rolling song for the motorcycle version of the Undertaker. Like the live performance. It was a decent little live performance. Like you mentioned, the crowd kind of booed them when they first got introduced, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, man. Like this version of the Undertaker specifically, hold on, wait. So I remember I think I heard like it was either Michael Cole or somebody mentioned it. Like this was like around this time. This was like the really pushing of the streak or something like that. Like it was in some documentary. Like they started. It was like I want to say 2002 or 2001 where they started really going forward with the streak and like acknowledging it at on TV and stuff like that. So it was like I think what was he like 8-0 around this time,
I think it was 11
11-0, yeah, 11-0. So yeah, it was kind of interesting to look back and see that kind of thing.
Yeah, because obviously this match was originally supposed to be Undertaker and Nathan Jones against Show and Train, but storyline-wise, Jones was injured on Heat. I think in reality, WWE had like zero faith in Jones at all at this point. Because, I mean, it's interesting, this year they really went all out signing big guys like Jones, Matt Morgan, Hindwright, just big dudes who couldn't work but were big. They seemed to have a real thing for these big guys around that time, didn't they, Nate?
Yeah, like a lot of just big dudes that looked physically impressive but had muscles for no reason because they couldn't really utilize it in the ring. You mentioned Heidenreich. Funny story real quick. I used to work at a sports memorabilia store down here in Virginia. And occasionally we'd have, different athletes come in and do signings, Mike Vick or Allen Iverson. We'd have pro wrestlers come through, like Rey Mysterio came through. He was cool. HBK came through. He was less cool. But then, I mean, at the time,
HBK or Born Again HBK.
I was gonna say this would have been like 06, 07 HBK. Wow. So yeah, I assume he's a cooler person now. But the one that always stands out to me was we brought in Heidenreich. And your man Heidenreich was just kind of there. Like you could tell he wasn't being a jerk, but he wasn't really into the whole autograph deal. And so he's outside. This is back when I used to smoke. And so I'm having a smoke break. Heidenreich's out there having a cigarette. And he's like, it's crazy in there, isn't it, brother? I was like, yeah, man, it's crazy in there. So, what y'all got going around in this town? Like, man, you can get in anything you want to, man. I assume, you just got to call people, because I'm not really trying to have this conversation with Heidenreich. So then he just I'm getting ready to go back inside, and he's like, hey, brother, you know where I could get some weed and women around these parts?
Whoa, buddy.
And I'm like, now here's the thing, Andrew, and maybe this is me being prejudiced, because if Rey Mysterio would have asked me that question, I'd have been like, booyaka, booyaka. But since Heidenreich asked me the question, I was like, I don't know. I'm a Christian. I don't smoke. I don't drink. Like, I just saw you smoking a cigarette. I'm trying to quit. And so I went back inside, and I was like, yeah, there was no way that me, and for people that haven't seen me, I'm not the tallest man in the world. I'm not the most muscle-bound dude in the world. I'm not going out to the bar with Heidenreich in Newport News, Virginia, because it might be something popping off, and I can't trust Heidenreich. Like, I ain't never fought beside this man before, and so yeah, that was a situation where discretion was the better part of valor, Martin Bushby, because I was like, nah, I'm not going out clubbing with your man Heidenreich over here.
Oh, I could totally see you and Rey Mysterio and Allen Iverson hanging out at the bar.
Yeah, that's a party.
Yeah. Well, any stories from Iverson's trip through the thing? I bet he was an interesting character to have in the store.
Oh yeah, he's cool. See, I covered him when he was in high school. Working at the high school TV station. So, like, I covered Iverson, I covered Vic. So yeah, he's good people, man. Like, I know people, like, there's an image that Allen Iverson has, Andrew, but like, if you actually talk to the dude, man, like, yeah, he's done some stuff that he would tell you that he's not proud of, but like, he's actually a down to earth kind of guy. Like, obviously, sometimes he be on that superstar stuff sometimes, because why wouldn't you if you have, like, multiple shoes named after you? So he's, like, down to earth, but at the same time, he's like, yeah, man, we can kick it, man, just call my people, man. And then he hops in a limo and you never hear from him again. Yeah. So it's like he was cool, man. Like everybody was cool for the most part, except for HBK, and maybe we just caught Sean on a bad day.
And Heidenreich.
Yeah, and Heidenreich. Yeah, well, Heidenreich was cool. I just wasn't going out with Heidenreich, brother. Like, that wasn't on the agenda.
So back to the match here, and
the listeners can really tell Martin we don't want to talk about this terrible match, because we spent the last 5 minutes talking about a guy who isn't even on this show.
You want to know what's crazy though? Like, specifically about this match, I think the Undertaker had been feuding with, like, Big Show and A-Train for like 5 months, dude. Like, because I remember Big Show injured him. Like, he threw him off the stage, and then Undertaker was out of storyline out of action, and then he came back at the Royal Rumble, and then he fought A-Train at the No Way Out pay-per-view, and then that's when they sort of, like, kind of, I guess, they lumped Nathan Jones in. But, like, it was kind of like a funny story, real quick. I interviewed James Tillis, who was the former head of security for WWE from 96 to 2011, and he told me the story Nathan Jones. Nathan, like, this was like a couple months after this. It was in August of 2003. WWE had a tour Australia, and Nathan Jones from Australia. So it was James, Paul Heyman, and Nathan Jones. They were, like, kind of in the same row on the same flight heading to Australia. And when it was time to leave Australia, everybody was getting ready at the hotel, getting ready to go. And James had went to go, tell Nate, it's time to tell Nate it's time to go. And then Nathan was like, I'm not going back. Like, straight up. Like, I'm staying here. Like, I'm not doing. And then he quit. Like, he straight up quit WWE. Like, he didn't get back on the flight. And he just, like, that was it. That was hilarious to me. Like, the fact that he was just like, because I mean, Nate, as you mentioned, it was at the Nate O'Mon that you mentioned, like, they didn't really do much of anything with Nathan Jones for the most part. So you can kind of see why he was probably like, we already here. I probably got paid for doing the live events here, and I'm just going to stay home. Like, why would I go back on the flight?
Yeah, I don't blame him either. Yeah, because they weren't doing anything with him, and he's had a pretty decent acting career. He's in the new Mad Max film and things like that. So,
I mean, is that any way to treat the former World Wrestling All Stars heavyweight champion? Don't disrespect that man like that.
Like Nate already said, this was, not the greatest match, and Undertaker won. This was his last year being the American Badass, and it kind of a bit of an uneventful year for him. Like you noted there, Andrew, he was feuding with Big Show for what seemed like forever until he fetched the dead man back at WrestleMania 20. But After this, the catfight girls were back. Most interesting thing about this segment is that Tori Wilson and Stacey Cleaver were backstage. Obviously, this is the year Tori was in Playboy, and they're both reading the Playboy. It's like, do people do that? You know, you do a pictorial of somebody, and then they're like, oh, let's check these pictures out after. Yeah, I just thought that was bizarre.
You know, you mentioned that, and I wanted to get Nate's thoughts about this, because like they were actually doing something. And Martin, I know you know this too. Like before this, I'm like they were actually doing something kind of decent with Tori Wilson, like when they had the storyline with her father and she was beefing with Dawn Marie. You remember that? And they had like the big blow off match at Royal Rumble. Like I was like, that was kind of like a decent, like a decent little storyline right there. I was like, that was like, and it just seeing like, how they go from that to just like her, beefing with the Miller Lite catfight girls in the backstage segment is crazy.
It's always weird to me how WWE weaves like real life endorsements or accomplishments that their performers get into the world of their show, right? Because like we see Stacey with and Tori with the Playboys. Like even like recently, we've seen who was it? Mandy Rose that was on the cover of Muscle and Fitness or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's walking around backstage like, girl, you at work. Why are you reading this magazine with yourself on the cover? Like I know you have to like let people know that these things are occurring, but the way they kind of jam these things in is always hilarious to me, Martin, because it's like, yeah, these two women in the world of the WWE, these two women are at the biggest show of the year, and they're not working. And so they're backstage reading Playboy for whatever reason for the articles. I guess they're really well written. And they're beefing with these beer girls. And so, yeah, that's hope you got paid well for that one, Tori.
So from one terrible women's segment to an actually decent match, as we had a three-way Trish Stratus, Jazz, and Victoria for the women's title. I thought it was a really enjoyable match. It's a far cry from the usual sort of like misogynistic bra and panties bullshit that they forced the Divas to do around this time period. A lot of near falls, great finish with Stevie Richards interfering, backfiring with Trish hitting the chick kick and becoming the new women's champion, sort of like for your feel-good Mania moment. What are your thoughts on this match? And specifically, obviously, Trish Stratus, has gone down sort of like in WWE history as being sort of like, that transitional person from this Divas era into sort of like, straight up women's wrestling. But I thought Jazz was a good cog in that wheel as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm gonna get a quick hot take in real quick. It's the debut episode. Gotta have a nice hot take. Other than Charlotte versus Asuka at WrestleMania 34, this is the best women's WrestleMania match that I have seen.
Oh,
and I'm leaving it at that.
Okay.
I love this match, and that's all I got to say.
Yeah, this match is excellent. Like I think, when you talk about Trish Stratus, and if you're to believe WWE speak, like Trish is the greatest female performance they've had, up until 5 years from now when it's Charlotte.
Yeah.
But like I feel like this is kind of the start or kind of the time period, Martin, where Trish starts to take that step. And a lot of the credit for Trish's development, and she said it, has to be given to women like Jazz and Victoria, who helped get her to that next level. I think Jazz is somebody who was underrated for her time. Like I love her and Teddy Long when they were together. Like it was just amazing. Like like Teddy being the mouthpiece for this intimidating physical woman. And then Victoria, low key might be my favorite WWE women's wrestler of all time. Like I think that she, even in these, because you're right, Martin. This is a weird time period where we're still in that Divas era, but we've got, mixed in with the fashion models, we've got women that can actually work. And I feel like Victoria in particular was somebody who could take these models and get a good match out of them. And play an effective heel, whether she was doing like the crazy gimmick with Stevie Richards or, when she had, I think she had like a checklist during Raw after this where she was like checking off all of her opponents down the list until she got to the women's championship. And she was always somebody who I felt was a good partner for whoever they were trying to push at the time. And you could get a good match out of them, putting them in there with Victoria. So yeah, this was a really good match. I'd have to go back and look through all of the women's matches at WrestleMania to get on that boat with Andrew. But yeah, this certainly has to be up there because I think all three women went out there and put on a good show.
Nate, let me ask you this on a serious note right here. As far as Jazz goes, like I feel like Jazz has had a very, very successful career in professional wrestling, like even outside of WWE. Do you think, just as a black performer, like do you think that she has gotten her flowers for what she's done in professional wrestling? That she kind of like not saying that she's close to retiring. I don't think she's done anytime soon. I know she was at the Indie Wrestling Expo I think a couple of weeks ago. But like, do you think Jazz has really gotten her performance for her flowers for what she's done in professional wrestling?
No, I don't think so. And I think, part of that is, because she is a woman of color. But I think it's also like there are so many women that kind of fall in that Jazz class that kind of came up at that time, and then kind of the golden era of Shimmer, right? Where you got like people like Sarah Del Rey or Cheerleader Melissa or Lufisto, right? That didn't get their due because for whatever reason they didn't fit what the WWE had as a mold for what their women superstars look like. And I think like the fact that Jazz even made it onto the roster, the fact that Jazz had this great match at WrestleMania, the fact that Jazz was a former women's champion, like I think that shows you how good she was. And if I were AEW, right? Like I'm not trying to tell you how to spend your money, Tony Khan, but if I was AEW, it's like, why wouldn't you? If she wants to do it, why wouldn't you bring in somebody like a Jazz or bring in somebody like a Lufisto, these veterans that could not only still work, but they could help bring up your women's division, because there's some talent in that AEW women's division, but it's really, really young talent. And they need, like much in the same way that Trish needed Jazz to kind of get her to that next level, these women right now in AEW need that veteran, to kind of get them to that next step. And I think like hiring Jazz would be a great move for that company.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially someone like a Jazz or a Victoria who can probably still go in the ring, because like these people in AEW are having to learn TV to TV, aren't they? And it doesn't seem like they've got that veteran person who can sort of like guide them and show them how to do a TV match and things like that. And it would be perfect to have someone like that in there.
Yeah, I think Victoria, like even in her TNA run and her Impact run, like Impact was up and down because that's what Impact does. Like the only thing for sure in Impact, as Sting would say, is nothing's for sure. But she was good in that. Like she got some really good matches out of Taryn Terrell in particular. So yeah, like Victoria, Jazz, Lufisto. Like if I'm Tony Khan, like besides swimming in a pool of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck, the next thing I'm doing after I dry off Andrew from swimming in that money pool is I'm calling one of those women to bring in, or all of those women, hell, you got the money, and bringing them in to help out the women's division.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. Yeah.
So next up, we're backstage with The Rock, who's obviously full on heel here. Rock says he's there for one reason only, to beat Steve Austin, and couldn't give a damn about the people. And Rock healing it up here after the audience had sort of turned on him following his time away from the company to make films. I mean, we can talk more of the match later when we get into Austin v. Rock, but Rock was brilliant around this time period.
Man,
Raw every week with his guitar in hand, singing about how awful the town was. I remember a Cleveland one that was absolutely brilliant.
The Cleveland one was brilliant. I think, and Andrew will probably agree with me on this one, my favorite one is still was it the Sacramento one?
Oh my God! Yes,
he's talking about the Lakers are going to come in and sweep you.
The Rock, like specifically speaking about, like just that whole stretch that he had is like the Hollywood version of Rock. Like he did some of the best promos that I think really stand out for him as far as his career goes. But like this one backstage at WrestleMania kind of really set the tone. Like this was like a real solid promo to amp up him and Steve Austin's match. Like I remember. I think it was the first thing he said. He asked him about the people, and The Rock was like, "The people," and he paused, and then he got the immediate reaction from the crowd, and then he said it again, and then he waited for him, and of course they responded. Like like I swear, like this dude had like these people on a string, man. Like it was like, oh my goodness, it was great.
Like you see why he is arguably like the best talker of all time. Like he's up there, he's in the discussion, like and. The subtle things they did with the character, right? Like even with the theme music, right? Like I love this. This might be my favorite version of the Rock's theme, where you get that helicopter shot going over L.A.
I was waiting for somebody to say,
and then you get the Rock. It's cooking, and then it goes into the theme. It's like that. It's like it's a small thing, Martin, but it tells you everything you need to know about that character in like 30 seconds.
and he whooped on that man who shall not be named at the last pay-per-view before this. I just had to get that out there.
And that made him a babyface to me.
Take it away, Bart.
Smackdown Tag Titles, Team Angle, Charlie S. and Shelton Benjamin v. Los Guerreros, Eddie and Chavo v. Chris Benoit and Rhino. And the men in this tag team, for me, are a large part of why SmackDown, with the original brand split, was known as the Workers brand. I mean, Eddie and Chavo, not only great in the ring, but had that great vignettes around this time, especially one they did on the golf course. But for this match specifically, not the best work by any of these guys, but you're always going to get a solid multi-man. I feel like they used to do a lot of multi-man tags around this time, and they were always pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Martin, I want to ask you, so was Edge supposed to be involved in this match? Like, was he supposed to be like a part of this match or like involved in this story? Like, 'cause I know he had neck surgery the year before, right? And I know because like the thing is, when I was watching the DVD portion of it, they had like this little kind of like mini documentary about Edge and like him having the surgery and knowing that he was going to miss the following year's WrestleMania. And it was like kind of crazy to look because, back then you really didn't see that much of like the real life stuff. Like you didn't really see that. So it was kind of cool, like watching that and just hearing him speak about like out of character speaking about like him, having to take that time away and like him like having to watch WrestleMania from the sidelines and stuff like that. So that was kind of like a cool little retrospect thing to kind of see, like, because considering now, like that's kind of the norm. Like, when you hear about somebody getting injured, like you kind of expect there be some type of documentary to come out later in the year or the following year to kind of chronicle what they've been up to since that injury.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he was supposed to be part of this match, because was this around the same time period, maybe a month or so after when he sort of like teaming with Hogan on SmackDown and things like that? I can't quite remember.
Yep.
So Matt was like come back then.
Because I remember Taz had mentioned during the match, he said something about Edge, but I think that may have had to do with Chris Benoit, like knowing Chris Benoit's past injuries, like with neck injuries and stuff like that. And he kind of just mentioned Edge in passing, talking about neck injuries. So I think that was kind of what that was.
Nate, what were your thoughts on this match and these teams around this time period?
I mean, you like the talent, like you were mentioning, Martin, is just outstanding. From what I remember, because this is besides the Undertaker Nathan Jones match, which I skipped for other reasons, like this was the only match on the show that I skipped just because I can't watch Benoit matches anymore. Yeah. But from what I remember, like all six guys did their thing, and I feel like we know how good Los Guerreros were. Like, even though I think Chavo's a bit underrated, but for sure. I feel like people forgot, man, how legit Benjamin and Haas were. Like, those guys were just fantastic. And I think that, unfortunately, like, that tag division was so deep, right? Like it's kind of like, and again, I hate to bring AEW up on this WrestleMania show, but it's like AEW's tag division. It's like, like Best Friends are a really, really good team, but there's probably 5 teams better than them. Yeah. In the division. Mm-hmm. And so they're not going to get the shine that they probably deserve. And I feel like that about Shelton and Charlie. Like, those guys were really, really strong. Unfortunately, like, they couldn't compete when you got teams like, Eddie and Chavo, who not only can do the stuff in the ring, but they have that charisma, and all the vignettes and stuff. So, like, this was a really strong time. And it shows you like that, like you were saying, that blue brand, like how strong they were.
What do you think about Shelton's? I mean, you mentioned earlier about WWE being terrible with black wrestlers earlier, but like, what do you think about Shelton Benjamin when he went solo? I mean, they tried a couple of things with him, didn't they? And he had that cracker of a match against Shawn Michaels on Raw. Yep. Do you think it was his connection with the audience or the lack of sort of like faith in him backstage?
It was a match that was so good that they used that one clip for the next, 10 years?
Yeah. Still using it. And here's the thing with Shelton, right? Because I understand when people say, like, one of his shortcomings is he's not the greatest talker in the world. And I'm like, okay, I understand. But how many people have we seen, Martin, that are really good in ring? Like, hell, we talking about Chris Benoit right now. Chris Benoit, phenomenal performer, not a great talker. No. There's ways, if you really are invested in pushing somebody, there's ways to kind of hide their faults. Paul Heyman was a master.
of that in ECW. So it's like if you really wanted to make Shelton Benjamin a champion after those matches with Triple H, after those matches with HBK, then you could have found a way. Like Paul Heyman, Kurt Angle, there's mouthpieces out there that you could have gave this man if you thought that he couldn't talk to the level of your world champion. But no, they went the other way with it, Martin. First of all, we're going to dye this man's hair blonde. Because that's what's going to get him over. Then that didn't work. And so they're like, okay, let's bring in his mother. Jesus. And they bring in Thea Vidal, who was a fine actress in her own right. But they bring in Thea Vidal to play this stereotypical overweight, black mother with high blood pressure.
Christ.
And they wonder why they didn't get him over, Martin. Like, why didn't the fans respond to this man with this mother that is always having to deal with sexual advances from people like Ric Flair or Goldust for whatever damn reason? So it's like, to me, when people say, yeah, Shelton was good, but he couldn't have been a world champion, it's like, well, why not? This is professional wrestling. Like, you can make, if you tell a good enough story, you can make anybody a credible champion, basically. And so, like, I feel like if they were invested in Shelton, they could have done something with him. But obviously, they're like, they saw Shelton at a certain level,
Man, let me hop in on this beat down, man, because they got me amped up.
Get him, nephew.
They got me amped up, Martin. But nah, man, just to echo what he said, like when you look at today, like, and I don't like being one of those dudes who always like jumping on certain dudes, especially if I never had the chance to say it to him in real life. But like, just looking at Braun Strowman, like, dog, they put the title on him. Like, look, his recent run, this stretch from WrestleMania to when he recently lost the title was terrible. I did not enjoy a lick of what he was doing character wise. In-ring work wasn't good. I did not enjoy it at all. And like, but he's a credible reason in their eyes to be a champion, regardless of whether Roman Reigns wasn't there or not. But still, like, looking at Shelton, like, Shelton had everything, man. He was athletic, had a good look, was in shape. He was doing stuff that most people wasn't doing at the time in the ring. Like, he was just solid all the way around. Like, and it was, like you said, it was ways to look around the promo skills that they may have thought that he didn't have, or maybe it was just a thing of them not giving him the opportunity or them not giving him the right preparation to fully enhance his skills in that specific department. But it's like, it's crazy because I definitely think that Shelton could have been a world heavyweight champion. He could have been a WWE champion, but it's like now, you kind of never know. And like right now, I'm kind of looking at the situation now with the Hurt Business, and I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, dude, if there was ever a time, if you were going to go all the way with Bobby Lashley, it is now to do that. Like, and I like Drew McIntyre. Don't get me wrong. I like Drew McIntyre. I really do. Drew McIntyre is one of my favorite guys in WWE right now, just because he's very intense and he comes off very realistic. But like, if you were to ever go all the way with somebody right now in WWE that you haven't gone with before, and like you could kind of relay that to kind of, Bobby Lashley's early career in WWE to Shelton Benjamin. Maybe they didn't go all the way with Lashley because they didn't think he had the promo ability. Now look at Lashley. Lashley has MVP, who has came into WWE and elevated like 5 black performers in the span of 5 months. You know what I'm saying? So like when you look at Bobby Lashley right now, like, why wouldn't you put the title? Like, you legit have no reason. Bobby Lashley, like, I'm like 100% sure, and I think we all would agree on this from what we've seen from the Hurt Business so far, that if crowds were there, they would be over. They would probably be one of the most over acts on the show, without question. So, like, it's just no reason to not put...
Especially after this, like, the Raw that happened the week before we recorded this, where they were like the baby faces at the end of the show. Like, coming out to step up for Raw. And so, like, and here's the thing, like, Martin, like, I'm not going to say nothing bad about that man, Braun Strowman, because I don't want to get these hands. But just imagine, like, instead of the Braun Strowman title reign that we had since WrestleMania, if that was a Big E title run, how much more entertaining that would be. And, like, Big E would seem to be somebody that has what Vince McMahon typically likes, like a big, muscle-bound dude. But he's a big, muscle-bound dude that can also wrestle and can also, more importantly, like, talk. Like, Big E is entertaining. Big E is somebody
talk to him, Nate.
That if you're about trying to get on these mainstream platforms, and granted, Martin, we can't really be live on a set right now because of COVID, but Big E's the kind of guy that you could put on a Tonight Show. You could put on Today's Show. Yep. You could put on Ellen whenever Ellen gets her act together. That you can, Big E is the kind of guy that you can send to these local stations in these towns that you hold in these pay-per-views and talk to the local media in a way that somebody like a Braun Strowman can't, because Big E has that natural just kind of charisma. And so it's like, when you say that we don't have anybody on the roster that's a person of color, particularly, black or Latino, that could be a world champion. It's like, nah, man, like there are people who are qualified, Martin, but you have to be willing to kind of, put the work in to let your audience know, hey, like we believe in this guy or we believe in this girl, because unfortunately, your audience has been trained to not believe you. When you put people of color in these positions. And one of the reasons why your audience has been trained to believe that, Martin, is something we're going to talk about in probably about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to keep foreshadowing.
Hey, Nate, keep the ammo in the pocket for that one, man. Keep the ammo in the pocket. We going to go off on that one. But, yeah, go ahead, Martin.
Well, next up we had Shawn Michaels against Chris Jericho. I mean, Shawn come back the previous year at SummerSlam and looked fantastic in that street fight against Triple H. I remember at the time he was back and forth about coming back full time. I think Jericho even said in his book he pitched the two of them at WrestleMania, and Shawn was unsure if he'd be around for that long. But then fast forward a few months, and pretty easy story to tell between these two, innit? I mean, Jericho growing up idolizing Shawn and doing everything he could to be like him, but now he'd surpassed him. And just one little note I wanted to make before we got to get into the match itself. I mean, the entrance as was this the first time HBK have ever used these little cannon things?
I know what you're talking about. but when the things messed up on him, yeah, I don't think Shawn's too fond of his interests messing. I remember that. I'm pretty sure we all have probably seen that clip when he was doing his signature pose, and then his fireworks are kind of late, and he kind of gave a little signal to the camera. And I don't know if y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think I can say what he did, but I Shawn isn't too fond of things not going splendidly during his entrance.
No. But match-wise, this is fantastic, isn't it? I mean, Shawn living up to his Mr. WrestleMania tag, and Jericho's no slouch either. I thought it was a really fun match. Not watched it in a couple of years. Fun little finish as well. Obviously, Jericho kicking out of the super kick at 2, quickly followed by an inside cradle for HBK rather picking up the win. I mean, you had to have Shawn win, didn't you, on his first match back at Mania? But Jericho didn't lose anything here for me. No. I mean, this match was it was as much about him as it was his great performance in HBK and them swerving him at the end of the match, kicking him in the balls following a handshake. I mean, these two have had a longer feud in 2008, including that great ladder match they had, but always great chemistry. And I thought, I don't know what you might think about this, Nate, but I think this was the first sort of like great Jericho WrestleMania match.
Yeah, it's up there. It might be, Martin. And I feel like we talk a lot about taking people for granted and taking moments for granted. And I feel like now in 2020, we just kind of take these HBK matches in this last part of his career for granted, right?
Yeah.
It's like there was a time where HBK coming back was something that wrestling fans didn't think they were going to see. It was always like the mythical, like, man, I wish HBK could come back for one more match. And who knew we would end up getting more than one more match? We got a whole kind of late career renaissance where Shawn Michaels at an age and with all the wear and tear on his body, he shouldn't have been able to put out classics, but he put out hit after hit after hit, especially at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't want to disrespect The Undertaker, but I think, yes, you got to get a man props for the streak or whatever, but it's no question. You said it, Martin. Like, HBK to me is Mr. WrestleMania, because for a lot of those Undertaker matches during the streak, a lot of those matches were kind of trash. Like, a lot of those matches were Undertaker versus A-Train and Big Show, or Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that match, ain't nobody trying to go back and watch those. Those ain't classics, but HBK, yeah, he didn't have a streak like Taker, but I feel like if you look at who had a higher ratio of quality matches, it's Shawn all day.
Yeah, it's crazy because this was the longest match on the show, I think, wasn't it?
It was like 22, 23 minutes.
23 minutes. I kind of got like a little. I pulled back up one of the old post wrestling news updates, man, that I did back in May. went through the archives and went and pulled this up from Chris Jericho's Talking Jericho podcast. This kind of relates back to what if you all remember when Nate was talking about when he ran into Shawn Michaels. He said Shawn was the nicest dude back then. But yes, Chris Jericho was talking about this match. And after they came back and he said it was highly praised from those backstage. But this is a quote from Chris Jericho. I'm gonna go ahead and read this to y'all. And I quote: he said, "Our WrestleMania match with me and Shawn, we went I think 25 minutes, and we only had 20 or 21 minutes. And I remember when we came through the curtain and Michael Hayes was there and he was like, you guys went long. And Shawn said, hold on. After a masterpiece like that, the first thing you're going to tell me is that we went too long. Go have a 5-star match first, then come back and talk to me. Get the F out of here. And then Jericho said he paused and he was like, I was like, well, that's the old Shawn right there.
That was brilliant.
Like that is a perfect clapback. Like, come on, Michael P.S. Hayes. Like, really? This what we gonna get on this man about?
Especially when you consider how long WrestleMania goes these days, like 6 hours. Yeah.
Man, I'm pretty sure any of us, if we were Shawn Michaels, we probably would have said the same thing. Like I'm pretty sure like they probably felt that was a real solid match after they left, and then you come back backstage, you probably think everybody gonna give you a standing ovation, and then you got the first dude come up to you like, you know, y'all went kind of long. I'd have been like, yeah, man, that was a cool little story right there.
Yeah, I could just imagine that, you know, you coming in and, you know, the adrenaline's still going. You're like, oh, my God, exactly. That was a masterpiece. And then it's like, oh, yeah, you guys went long. It's like, fuck you, man.
Now, Martin, you know, I know the next match on the card. I think we all know what the next match on the card is. I was wondering if I could do the honors for this one, my brother.
Yeah, go for it.
So, Brother Nate. The World Heavyweight Championship, the seventh match on this WrestleMania card, including the pre-show match. We got Triple H with Ric Flair defending the world title against one Booker T. Now, you know, we'd be remiss not to mention Triple H's promo that he cut on Booker T on the lead up to WrestleMania, and I think I think it's fair that I should read this, and then we get your thoughts on this, Brother Nate, and just how condescending and just straight up like blatantly like in your face kind of racist it was in this, and then I also kind of want to talk to you like specifically, and Martin, I want to get your thoughts about this too, about how Booker T has been very critical of black performers as of late, like Big E specifically, and I kind of just want to tie all that in together. So to just read this promo that Triple H cut on Booker T on a Raw before WrestleMania, he said, I think you're a little bit confused about your role in life here. You're going to get to go to WrestleMania, but the fact is, Booker, somebody like you doesn't get to be a world champion. People like you don't deserve it. That is reserved for people like me. That is where the confusion is. You're not here to be a competitor. You're here to be an entertainer. That is what you do. You entertain people. Hell, you entertain me all the time. Go ahead, do a little dance for me. Go ahead, give me one of those spin-a-roonies. Entertain me. That is your job. Don't be embarrassed. You're here to make people like me laugh with your nappy hair and your suckers. Hell, I was laughing all week long after you won that battle royal. Now, Nate, I don't know if that's just you, but like I read that kind of steamed me up a little bit, kind of reading that. I don't know if that's just me, but like I was kind of reading that, kind of made me want to slap Paul back upside his head. So you can think thinking that was something cool to say, but like, Nate, I just want to kind of give you the reins on this one and let you, kind of dissect it.
Well, here's the thing. Like when y'all first reached out to me to do the show, I'm like, cool, whatever. I like you dudes. Let's link up. And then I'm like, what are we talking about? And Martin Andrew sends me the message. We're gonna talk about WrestleMania 19. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me look it up. Okay, Safeco Field, Seattle. Okay, cool. We got Shawn and Jericho. Oh, that's great. Triple H and Booker T, ain't this about a and it's like my whole mood changed right there. I was tazzed, like the mood is about to change. The mood changed, Martin Bushby. And so when you think about this promo, right, and the lead up, the run up to the Booker T Triple H world title match, I might surprise you with this, Andrew, because I don't really like. Here's the thing, like what Triple H said is out of pocket.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with it if the story is told the way it's supposed to be told, right?
And Booker T wins, right?
Exactly, because you can't have somebody come out here and say, like, you're less than, you don't belong here, you're not good enough, you're only here to entertain people like me, you're too broke, you're too black, your hair's nappy, we're going to show you your jail records. all that stuff. You can't have somebody say all that and then win, because then that just reinforces the message, subconsciously to your audience, like, oh yeah, Triple H is right. Booker T ain't shit. And that's what the audience takes away from that. And so, like, that's my biggest thing, Martin, because actually I like it when you lean into that, because I feel like that's a story that feels real to me. That felt like one of the most authentic promos of Triple H's life, Andrew. Like, I felt like Triple H felt that promo, and so it's like, that's
probably did.
That's real. And so it's like, I'm here for that. If you tell the story of Booker had all this obstacles, in his way, all of this stuff that he had to fight, and he overcame it, then that's a great story. And then we could have that moment like we had when Kofi Kingston beat Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. We could have had this moment. But no, they went the other way. And, like, not only did they go the other way, Martin, and I'm sure you'll talk about it here in a second, but the match didn't even do Booker T any favors. Like, I feel like the match itself, even though I hate that he lost, but if he's going to lose, there's a better way you could have made him look in defeat. And he kind of looked like a chump losing to Triple H in this fashion.
Yeah, Martin, I kind of want to ask you, just looking from your perspective, and I know, like, I've seen you on social media, and I know you're very aware of what's going on out here, which I respect. But, like, I just want to ask you from, like, a white male's perspective, like, when you hear and when you rehear that promo, and, like, when you, like, kind of see, like, because back then when I'm looking at it, I really wasn't paying attention, and I really didn't like quite grasp what it like. But now I'm looking at it, hindsight being 2020, it's kind of like, damn, like, that was kind of like some subconsciously, like, very, very, like, blatantly, like, in your face kind of racist thing that they were kind of doing at the time. So like, Martin, I kind of want to ask you, like, from a white male's perspective, like, what do you kind of think about the scenario overall, and how the match kind of turned out for Booker T, and what that kind of meant for the future of professional wrestling, as far as, like, black performers are presented in WWE specifically?
Yeah, I think, like you, at the time, it sort of, like, went over my head a bit, but then the more you read about it and the more you get educated about it. And I think especially the promo he did after the sort of, like, one where he's saying you don't deserve, people like you don't win world titles. He did a promo after that one where he was throwing money at him and telling him to pick his bags up and things like that. And I think even at the time that one was more on the nose. But I think Nate hit the bullseye there, because, if you are going to do this storyline, Booker has got to win, you know what I mean? Triple H is supposed to be this, sort of like waspy guy from Connecticut, and then, Booker T's like the working class guy, and if he has to beat him following this. And WWE have claimed that, like, oh no, when they were saying that, guys like you don't win world titles, we were referring to him as a WCW guy, and that's bullshit.
Yes,
yeah. right on the head right there. But, like, it was another, and I'm pretty sure Martin was going to touch on this, but, like, and I think this was what Nate was kind of referring to, is the way Booker T lost. Like, Triple H hit him with the pedigree, right? And then dude didn't pin him for like 20 seconds.
Yeah,
like he stayed on the ground for like 20 seconds, and then he pinned, and then he just 1, 2, 3, and then Errol Hebner did his signature slow count. Like, and I was like, like, watching that back, I'm like, damn, like, that's how they did Booker T. Like, after they made that man, like, I'm pretty sure he probably agreed to it. I don't think they would force him to reveal that he, he's had history, that he went to jail before and stuff like that. But I'm like, just knowing, like, the stuff that he revealed publicly, and then having that, like, intertwined in the storyline, and just to kind of do him like that. And then, I mean, he eventually went on to win the world title, not the WWE title, but like, but that was under a gimmick. It wasn't that
exactly
Booker T that they kind of made light of.
See, Booker T should have, in hindsight, Booker T should have listened to the pamphlet, to the game manual for WrestleMania 19 on the GameCube. Be careful when you negotiate your contract with the McMahons.
Hey, Nate, let me ask you this. So I'm pretty sure you've probably seen some of the stuff that Booker T has said on his podcast about Big E specifically, when he was like, Big E needs to change this, and he, it can't be all colorful, and, he needs to tone it down with the New Day stuff. Like, do you think that Booker T is saying that from a perspective of he's trying to help Big E dodge what he went through as far as this whole situation, or do you think it's just a whole another thing of, like, hating on the young dude or hating on the younger performer because, the people are just rallying behind Big E, as we still are, But like, I just wanted to get your thoughts about that because I'm sure you've seen some of this stuff because it's been all over about Booker T's comments about Big E specifically.
See, here's we talked about this on the Nubian Wrestling Advocates, which you can check out on the Kings of Sport Patreon. Cheap plug. But like, I got a lot of respect for Booker T, man, like, and what he's accomplished and achieved in the business. But I do feel like, whether you're talking about his comments about Big E or his comments about Naomi earlier this year, like, I don't feel like it's coming from a place of malice from Booker or a place of hate. I do feel like he's trying to help, but I think he's missing the point, right? Because he's trying to tell them, do what I did, and that'll help you get over it. And it's like, no, like, I understand you felt that you had to do what you had to do at that time, Booker, but it's 2020, right? The game's changed. And Big E, like, whether he's dancing or gyrating his hips or throwing pancakes around, like, you can make money with Big E. You can have Big E be your world champion. Like, he might have to change some things here or there. And Big E said, like, I can laugh and smile and joke, but when it's time to wrestle, that's what I do, right? I can get serious. And I feel like people like Booker, people like Mark Henry, like some of these, like the elder statesmen in the black wrestling community that had to go through a lot of stuff back in their time. I feel like they're trying to help the younger generation, Andrew, but their help is actually counterproductive, right? Because it's like, instead of telling Big E, like, nah, man, you don't have to change for them because you're good enough regardless. Like, just be you and you can make money. Just be you and you can be a world champion. No, they're saying you got to conform to how it was back in the 90s or back in the early 2000s. And I think that's the wrong message to send to, these young black performers, particularly when their counterparts, their Caucasian brothers and sisters don't have to live under that same kind of structure. Like going back to that Talking Smack episode where, the Miz and Big E were speaking about their experiences in the company. And it's like, yeah, Miz, like, nobody's saying that you didn't have to work to get to where you got, but you didn't have to fight this extra stuff that people like Big E or people like Sasha or people like Naomi have had to go up against just based on kind of perceptions in the business. And as much as, all three of us, we love wrestling. That's the reason we're talking about wrestling on this podcast. But you can't ignore wrestling has had this weird, tricky, complicated relationship when it comes to presenting different races or different ethnicities or even like different sexualities, right? Like, LGBT representation in the sport. Like, that's something that they've always kind of had to grapple with.
Right, and I agree with that. Like, and I've heard Booker T speak about this match specifically, and like just the way that he kind of described it, it was like he didn't want to say too much. Like, basically the way he put it was, I just did business. And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get that to a certain extent. I know he not gonna.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, that's the other thing. Besides Booker T trying to help, Booker T is also not trying to mess up his bag, Andrew.
Yeah, that's a fact. I'm gonna just let y'all know this now. Booker T is under contract with WWE until 2027. Yes. He is not going to say anything like too out of line when it comes to WWE because he is under that deal, and that's But like just like I just know that a part of him that kind of burned him up just a little bit. Like I just know, because like it's no way, dude, that like just how that whole storyline played out and like the momentum he had. Like it wasn't like like dude, it wasn't like Booker was like some just some random person they just threw into the story. Like, Booker was over, bro. People they wanted it. Like,
one of the few WCW guys that actually got over.
Exactly, and then you got Jerry the King Lawler on commentary, kind of siding with Triple H and adding this little I'm gonna leave that alone. But King was just throwing little dingers out there, some on the fence fence comments he was making. So I'm gonna just leave that at that.
Like if Triple H was supposed to win this match, Martin, there's a way you can have Triple H win while Booker still looks strong, right? Whether that's Triple H using a sledgehammer or Ric Flair interfering, like there's a way to tell the story of Booker just coming up short. And him still being strong, and you can even, maybe even make more money on the rematch. But they chose not to, and to have Booker T take the pedigree and then just lay there for like 15, 20 seconds. It's like, come on, man. Like this doesn't help. Like it doesn't help Booker T, and it really, Martin, didn't make Triple H look that great either.
No. Because like leading up to the finish, the match isn't too bad. It's actually, I don't remember much about.
Yeah.
I didn't remember much about it, but yeah, it's actually a pretty decent match. And
yeah.
But aside from everything else, it's like, why would you want to shoot yourself in the foot here? It's like, I know Booker went back up the card a few years later following this with that King Booker stuff, but what a waste he had a chance to crown a new guy here and flushed away just to save Triple H's ego.
Yeah, right. And it's like it's not like Triple H would have been hurt by this, right? Because again, there's money in the rematch, right? Like there's money in the chase, and so
for sure,
yeah. Like not only would Booker have been elevated that night, but you would have had a new feud and a new star for Triple H to eventually get that win back over.
And Martin didn't what they did for the rest of the year, because I mean that I don't know if you remember much about Triple H as champion in 2003, but those Raws were absolute snooze fests. I mean, Evolution opening up every show, doing a promo that seemed to go on for ages, and he didn't really kick up another gear till he started feuding with Batista the year after. But yeah, it's like someone like Booker T with all the the great wrestling and energy that he had would have been a perfect opponent for Triple H.
You could have had because Triple H is such a high key Ric Flair 4 Horseman mark. Like one of the 4 Horsemen's greatest feuds was against Dusty Rhodes, like the Common Man, or one of the 4 Horsemen's greatest feuds was against Sting, this up and coming young dude. And you could have recreated a feud like that with Booker T. Like Booker T's the champ, and now Evolution has their sights set on him, and these 4 dudes are trying to take Booker T down. And you could have told great stories for the next 6 months. But, Hunter had to get that win, man. Hunter had to get that WrestleMania payday.
I feel like WWE, they had three chances to get that belt off of Triple H over the past that early 2000s or early 2003. Like I honestly felt like he should have dropped the belt to Scott Steiner. Like they had a horrible match at Royal Rumble 2003, but they had a solid one at the No Way Out pay-per-view, and I was like, they should have did it. And then especially when they got the Booker T and Martin, Triple H, he didn't drop that title until he lost to Goldberg, right? And Unforgiven, right? He held that title until like September 2003.
They messed that up again at Goldberg's. The only time Goldberg was good in that whole sort of period was that SummerSlam where he smashed through everybody. And it's like he should have won it then. It's like now Triple H came up tops again for that one.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I was about to say I was looking at the match card, and that's why I said. And then I was like, what a segue we just had to the person that's in the match. I was like, what a transition.
It just became a shoot, brother.
I was like, I felt bad for Martin having to make this transition. I was like, I'm gonna try to take it off his hand.
Well, yeah, I mean, we went from like a low-key racist to an out-and-out racist, didn't we?
To an on-camera racist. Everybody's a little racist, brother.
Yeah, I mean,
come on, dude.
Of course, Vince v. Hulk Hogan. I mean, this match had the lion's share of the advertising leading into this, didn't it, Andrew? I mean, he's even on the cover of the DVD. Had tons of TV time as the story was who made WrestleMania? Was it Hulk or Vince? And Vince trying to like destroy Hulkamania once and forever. That seemed to be like take up so much time on Raw, especially when you consider the other guys that they had on this show.
Let me not be a bluff. 7-year-old me was loving the hell out of this match. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sit here and be like I was sitting at the TV like, oh no. I enjoyed the match for what it was, and I even watching it like, but not watching it back because like I just couldn't get myself to enjoy Hulk Hogan. I just couldn't like at all. But like looking back, this what like in a retrospect kind of thing. These 2 old dudes kind of did in the ring. They got in the ring. They did what they had to do to entertain the crowd. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, it's funny looking back with 2020 vision that Vince McMahon of all people in this match is the more reasonable, the more tolerant person in this matchup, Martin Bushby. So I was actually cheering for Vince, even though I knew Hulk won the match. I was cheering for Vince to win just so Terry could go home. But yeah, like if I'm just looking at this as a piece of entertainment, like it did what it was supposed to do. It worked. And like the ultimate barometer of whether something works or not, whether we like it or not, Martin, is the response. And the people were into it. And so like I feel like this was maybe like this match and ironically enough, that match in TNA, right? Where it was Hogan versus Sting one last time. Like, that match shouldn't have worked at all. But they were able to find some way to make it work. And the same with this, with Hogan and Vince. So, like, yeah, it wasn't my favorite match on the card. It wasn't even in my top 3 or 4. But, like, for what it needed to be, I thought both of these old dudes did a good job.
Yeah, because I remember at the time leading into the show not expecting anything from this at all, but like as pure spectacle, it delivered way more than it should have. I mean, Vince bleeding everywhere, Vince hitting a fucking leg drop off the ladder. I mean, that classic shot of Vince with the lead pipe, and then even Roddy Piper coming out and making a surprise appearance. But yeah, this worked. It's like you noted with that Sting match in TNA, this worked when it really shouldn't have.
And how, like, I think we got to give a lot of credit, man. I hate giving credit to this man, but like Vince McMahon, when he's a performer, like there have been very few that have been able to do like what Vince does. And it's like, like I'm not a fan of the man as a human being, but as a performer, like you can't discount what he brings to the table.
Can somebody explain to me the Roddy Piper thing? Like, now. Well, I would say I get it to an extent now, but like I'm thinking about young me watching this, like, and I was just like, who the hell is this dude? Like, who is this? Like, I had the announcers going crazy. Roddy Piper. I'm like, who is this dude? Like, I just wanted to like kind of get. Obviously, this has something to do with something that happened maybe 15 or not even 15, but like 11 years prior or 15 years prior. That they try to kind of like reconnect or something like that.
Well, they were in the full nostalgia shit, weren't they? Obviously, they realised the nostalgia had worked 100% bringing Hogan back, and then obviously Piper was his opponent in WrestleMania 1, so I guess they kind of thought, oh, well, we'll throw him into the mix since they're talking about who created WrestleMania, and it was either him or sort of like Mr. T or Paul Orndorff that they fetched him for this one, really.
Yeah, I thought it's a good, and it's one of the few times, guys, because WWE will often drift in and drift out of how much of their history they want to connect to the present. But I thought this feud was a good way of linking stuff back to the original WrestleMania and that rock and wrestling era, and so Piper totally made sense here. I kind of think like, if like maybe they had to do it here because that was when Terry was available, but I wonder if they would they have waited to do this at WrestleMania 20? Because it feels like that this story would have made more sense for like the 20th installment of WrestleMania than the 19th.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I think you're right there. I think it was just when old Terry was available to, and whether they could get this match in there.
Hulk, can you be here next year? Oh, sorry, brother. I gotta shoot a couple videos with my friend Bubba. Sorry, dude. Terry.
Well,
Terry Bollea.
The fact that I have a share a birthday with that man is always funny to me.
Oh my goodness, man! How long y'all think it'll be before we see Hulk back on WWE program? I know he was the host of last year's WrestleMania, so obviously the relationship is still there. But
was he at Crown? Was it Crown Jewel this year that he was at, or was that last year?
That was hold on, wait, yeah, he was at Crown Jewel, but Martin, wasn't he about to go in the Hall of Fame again this year before the COVID happened? Like, wasn't he about to go in with the NWO?
Oh, maybe. They were going to do the NWO, weren't they?
Yeah. So that's answer my own damn question. There it is.
I mean, and anybody that played that horrible 2K game, WWE 2K20, like he's in the game. Like he's in the game now. So Hogan is fully back in the good grace of the company, I think.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
They'll bring him back. They'll bring him back whenever they want. They don't care anymore, do they?
No.
But moving on to the penultimate match, and tons of background on this one. Austin v. Rock, obviously two of the biggest stars the company's ever had. But I mean, Austin's year leading into this match obviously had a tumultuous time. You know, he walked out of the company, his marriage broke down, then obviously the neck issues that had plagued him for years. I think a doctor had even told him, like, in 2003 that he could end up being paralyzed, and then obviously there's a well-documented story about the night before where he had a panic attack in the hotel and he consumed a crazy amount of energy drinks and coffee, which landed him in hospital having fluid pumped into him. And I mean, he had already decided this was going to be his last match, but hadn't told anybody. And then obviously the panic attack brought on by the pressure that he was putting on himself to have a WrestleMania match. obviously the story going into this one is Rock's never beaten Austin at Mania, and enjoyable match, I thought. Rock getting the win, not the best of the Mania matches. 17 and 15 are above this one for me, but still a good match considering everything that had, happened leading into this. But I mean, just before we get into talking about the match specifics, I wanted to ask you guys about the booking, because obviously we didn't know going into this match it was going to be Austin's last match, and all things considered, Rock is fantastic, great last opponent for him, isn't he? But without that knowledge, would you guys have been maybe tempted to put him against Hogan? That sort of like quote-unquote dream match that maybe a lot of wrestling fans wanted to see, or maybe fetch Goldberg in a couple of days earlier or a couple of months earlier. I mean, not knowing that it was going to be Austin's last match, would you maybe put him against a different opponent over Rocky, Nate?
I mean, it's tough because this is like, other than Vince McMahon, I would say Rock is Stone Cold's greatest opponent in the WWE. Yeah. And so it's fitting in a way that it ended up being the last match. But had they known ahead of time, I'm sure the temptation would have been there to put him in there with Goldberg, or to put him in there with even Vince. Like, I think like they might have made it a triple threat with Hogan, Vince, and Austin. Like, I made WrestleMania, dude. No, I made WrestleMania. No, I made WrestleMania, you mealy mouth son of a bitch. Like, guys, you all made WrestleMania. You're all pretty. Like, like, you don't have to argue about this. But like, I feel like in a way, Martin, like this was the fitting end, to the Austin Rock rivalry, and also, Austin in general. And I feel like, you said this match wasn't as good as the other ones. I kind of like it a little bit more. Like, it technically, I agree. Like, bell to bell, I think I like the others a little bit more. But and maybe it's having the hindsight of knowing that this was Austin's last match. I think just kind of the emotional beats maybe hit for me a little bit more in this match than the other two.
Yeah, Austin is all that, like what Stone Cold did is something I feel like I would do just in life in general. Like he didn't announce like that was his last match. Like he didn't do. I feel like the low key way is always the best to go, just with anything. Honestly, like when it comes to stuff like that, like he didn't say anything. He just like the only people that knew was the people that needed to know. Like I know he said that he told Vince and he told The Rock, and that was it. The only people that knew, and Jim Ross knew. But Jim Ross kind of did a real good job on commentary for somebody who knew that was going to be Stone Cold's last match. Like he like really played it up like real well. So I think that was kind of cool how Austin went about that. And I always admire people that kind of do stuff like that just in general. Like they don't blow up the spot. Like they kind of just keep it on the low tip. But yeah, I actually like this match kind of more than some of the other WrestleMania matches, and I think it was just like how Nate said, it was just because having the the hindsight, knowing that this is going to be his last match, and I think they kind of did more like character work in this match in a way, like The Rock. I remember The Rock had kind of put on Austin's vest, and like the him doing his signature sale as a stunner in Austin's vest, and you know what I'm saying, just doing that, giving them the 3 rock bottoms because they had wrestled at WrestleMania twice before, right? Before this one, right? So it was like the symbolism of The Rock giving him the first rock bottom, Austin kicking out, The Rock giving him the second rock bottom, Austin kicking out, and then it was the third one for their third match that put Austin down. And I think that was like the cool thing about this match. And you could kind of I know The Rock talked about this, and Stone Cold talked about this in the interview, when The Rock got up and he kind of leaned over to Austin to kind of talk to him, and I think he just told him like, I appreciate you, and just gave him some kind words, and then kind of gave him a slap on the chest, and then just to let him know like that was the final one type thing. So I think this was probably one of if not the best match they had out throughout their trilogy.
I'd say it's probably the most emotional one, wasn't it? But I suppose bell to bell, the Mania 17 one for me is just that
one's great. Like like I think that like this might be my favorite rivalry in the WWE, like of all time, just because like you've got the two, again, like we're talking about this time period in 2003 where it's like the curtain is going down on the Attitude Era. And for me, like Austin and Rock, and I know WWE tries to revise history and tell me that Triple H was on that level in the Attitude Era when he really wasn't. He was a nice little piece, but he wasn't the main dish. But like Austin and Rock were the Attitude Era for me, and so like that rivalry, and in this match in particular, as the final chapter is some of my favorite matches.
So last question before we get onto the match. I mean, obviously there's been wrestling retirements never usually amount to anything, do they? But Austin's obviously stuck to his. I mean, there have been rumours over the years about him coming back, but do you think it's pure speculation, or do you think he's ever really considered it, Andrew?
Who, The Rock or Stone Cold? Oh, I honestly, bro, I think Stone Cold is one of those people that wouldn't want to get in the ring if he knew he wasn't going to be able to deliver what he thought people would expect. Like I can't see Austin getting in there and like just being like trying to half-ass. I feel like if he did, he would try to go all the way. And like we kind of saw it at the I think it was the Raw reunion show last year when he was hitting the ropes like and going full speed on the ropes. People was like, Austin looked kind of sharp in the ring, but I'm like, I think that's a whole different thing from him getting body slammed and him having to go a full 10, 15 minutes with somebody. But I honestly, I think if we ever honestly see Austin back, I feel like the right thing to do would be one of those little those little out of not necessarily the Saudi show, but like I feel like if he did it in front of a U.S. crowd or even at a WrestleMania, the only thing I wouldn't want is for people to get disappointed and have these super high expectations of what they think Austin's going to do when he get back in the ring. Like, I'm like, dude, what is Austin, like 52? 50? Like, come on, like you can't expect him to go out there and like put on this amazing match. Like, but I think if he were to come, I'm gonna just leave it at, I think Austin could come back, but I just don't think he would want to, as far as him not being able to deliver what he thinks people would expect of him.
Yeah, like I'm sure he's thought of it. I'm sure it's crossed his mind over the years, just because you can't do something that good for that long and have it completely leave your system, right? Like there's a reason why people come back, ill-advised and still try to do what they did when they were younger. Like there's a reason Tito Ortiz still out here on these streets trying to fight people.
Oh God.
Right? So I feel like, like just that competitive part of Austin probably over the years has been like, I need to get back out there. But Andrew's right. Like I don't think he would come out, like he's not the kind of guy who's just going to come out here and half-ass it for a paycheck. Like if he can't be Stone Cold, I don't think he would want to get in that ring. So I feel like the most we'll get is, these occasional returns when he comes in and drinks beer and maybe rides an ATV to the ring and talks for like 5-10 minutes and throws up some middle fingers, and that's it. He has a Stone Cold Appreciation Day with Byron Saxton, maybe something like that. And then that's the most we get, because I don't think Steve would, put himself out there if he couldn't give 100%.
And just to mention The Rock for a minute, like the Rock was kind of like very, like I think you both would agree, The Rock was kind of like really giving over like that 2002 to 2003 stretch, like as far as like what he did. Of course, he put over Brock at SummerSlam 02, and then he came back, kind of got the steam back when he beat Hogan at No Way Out 2003. It took that to another level when he beat Stone Cold at this show, and then he gave all that to Goldberg, and Goldberg kind of took that and went on to win the world title. So like the Rock did his thing. I feel like this is like a really underrated period of the Rock's career, like this Hollywood portion where he was kind of really in and out. Like I feel like he made like a very big impact, like as far as like what he was able to do and help and elevate talents while still being able to keep that steam that the Rock has.
Well, that's the thing. Like he was able to get people over without, losing anything himself, Martin. Like what a crazy concept. Like if you actually help elevate your coworkers, then when they beat you, it doesn't make you look weak. Maybe somebody should think about that, Triple H.
Exactly. It's worked for all these years, but not for Triple H. But yeah. But I suppose with the Rock's comebacks, it's, when he does come back, you're like, why he doesn't need this? He doesn't need wrestling in his life anymore. But I suppose it's that direct feedback you're getting from the audience, which is why a lot of big name actors will go back to doing theatre and things like that. And it's like you're not getting that when you're doing film and TV. It's that direct audience feedback you're getting from them.
Martin and Nate, let me ask y'all this. So I know y'all, I'm pretty sure y'all probably seen like some of the stuff on social media about what they doing with Roman Reigns right now and him feuding with Jey Uso. And I think that kind of sparked a lot of people's brains as far as like, okay, so if they go in this whole bloodline thing, you know, maybe the end result of all this is possibly, you know, Mr. Dwayne Johnson coming back for Roman Reigns. But firstly, I think that's like, I'm not the biggest fan of WWE's business antics. I'm gonna say that, but I feel like them marketing a The Rock versus Roman Reigns match is like nothing but pure money that would just take up mainstream. Like, do y'all think that was something that'd be plausible as far as like kind of the bloodline storyline that they have going right now, and that kind of be the final result of what it is? Because since we're on the topic of The Rock,
I mean, it could be, Martin. Like, I think that, like, Andrew's right. It would make all the money in the world. I think it'd be, you know, a really interesting build, you know, given that we've got Heyman and Roman aligned now. And, like, you know, we just talked about how giving The Rock is. And, you know, we even saw that when Rock came back during the Cena feud, right? Like, I feel like Rock would, like, make Roman look like $1 million, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because he's family, right? So I feel like, I'm not sure how likely that is to happen, Martin, but they certainly would have worse WrestleMania programs than Roman versus Rock.
I think, obviously it'd have to be in a massive football stadium with a huge crowd, wouldn't it, to make it worth it for especially The Rock. And I'm certainly sure that everyone else would be, but I suppose it's all waiting on whether Dwayne would want to say yes. Because did he do a recent, was it this year or the end of last year, that said he's like officially retired from wrestling?
Yeah, he said that, Martin, but
if a man call him out for that paycheck, he gonna be like, you know.
But that's the thing. Like, you're like, really, like when we're talking about The Rock coming back for a WrestleMania match, like, you're talking maybe 5 dates, right, at most, because you got the actual match, you got the go home Raw, and then maybe 1 or 2 Raws sprinkled in over that 3-month period leading up, you know, to WrestleMania. So maybe 4 dates, right? 3 or 4 dates. Like, I feel like Rock might be into that, especially, like I said, if it would help Roman out. Because we've seen, like, at that Royal Rumble, like, Rock is not averse to trying to get his cousin over. So,
there was some confusion on his face when everyone was booing him, poor guy.
Yeah, he's like, come on, you like me? This guy's kind of like me, sort of. Not really, but he family. Why don't you like my family?
Not even to get off like super off topic, but like just speaking about that moment specifically, dude. Like, that just show you how over Daniel Bryan is. Like, that whole thing happened because people were upset because Daniel Bryan got eliminated. Like, and it was just ridiculous to, like, in a good way, ridiculous to me. Like, how
even The Rock couldn't save it.
Yeah, right, exactly. The Rock couldn't save Roman Reigns from getting booed because Daniel Bryan was that over.
But yeah, I do think Roman v. Rock would be, make a ton of money and be a really good spectacle and be a pretty decent match probably. But yeah, it'd be great to see. But should we move on to our main event? Because, I mean, you thought the background for the last match was intense, but Kurt Angle, who had obviously suffered neck injuries his whole career while at the Olympics, suffered another neck injury at No Way Out early in the year. Surgery was required, but that would have taken him out of action for a year. But instead, as Kurt Angle was talking about doing the surgery right away, he delayed it so he could have the match with Brock here. And when you think about that going into this match, it's insane to think the state of Angle's body and all the bumps he was taking in this match directly onto his neck. And I mean, everyone always talks about, you know, Brock slipping on the shooting star press and landing on his head. But I mean, real good match leading up to that finish that everyone just remembers. But just thinking about the state Kurt Angle's body was in and then watching this match and you're just like, this guy is on another level.
No, 100%. Like, and you know, at the top of the show, I mentioned Rey Mysterio being in that conversation as far as like one of the greatest of all time. Like, Kurt is for sure. Like up there in that conversation as far as and you both made great points when y'all talked about like as far as the promo ability kind of hurting Rey Mysterio, that does not apply to Kurt Angle at all. Like Kurt Angle has done the serious stuff, he has done the comedy stuff, like and everything is kind of clicked. So for sure, I think Kurt Angle belongs in that, that greatest of all time conversation.
And the crazy thing is, like, as good as Kurt is here, like, I feel like he got even better in TNA, which is crazy when you look at some of those matches with Samoa Joe, right? When you look at some of those matches with AJ, even some of those matches with older guys like Sting or Jeff Jarrett, like, Kurt Angle is arguably the greatest all-around pro wrestler ever. Like, you can make that claim. And, like, just the way that, like, the stuff he put his body through, like, obviously it wasn't the best for him in a health perspective in terms of physical and mental health. Like, it wasn't the best for the dude, but the fact that he's able to come out here and put on classic after classic, clinic after clinic, like, it just shows you how talented this man was. And it's like, it almost feels like, and it's going to sound crazy to say this, Martin, it almost feels like Kurt didn't get enough in the WWE, right? Like like you talk about Triple H and these long title reigns, and I'm not trying to throw more shade at your boy Hunter, but it's like Kurt Angle should have been that dude with those lengthy title reigns, because it's like, yeah, nobody can beat this dude, because not only is he like the greatest amateur wrestler in the company, but he's a hell of a pro wrestler too. So like Kurt should have been that dude with multiple title reigns and lengthy title reigns.
Yeah, because I think his TNA run was actually longer than his WWE, his original WWE one.
Yeah.
But yeah, this match, I mean, everyone always remembers it for that shooting star press, but it's actually a cracking main event, a worthy WrestleMania match, and it is just a shame that everyone just remembers it for that one moment in it.
Yeah, and like, again, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Brock Lesnar, particularly after what he did to that man Kofi Kingston. But like, you got to give Brock credit, man. Like, shooting star aside, like, I feel like Brock at this, like, you can tell when Brock is motivated and when Brock is just picking up a check. And it felt like Brock was motivated here. And it's hard not to be motivated when you're in there with one of the best of all time. So like, yeah, you as much as you want to credit Kurt, you got to give Brock props on this match as well.
Let me ask you this, Martin. Like, as far as the Brock and Kurt trilogy of matches, like, 'cause they feuded for quite a long time. I know it was this match. They had that Iron Man match on SmackDown. They had the SummerSlam 2003 match. Like, what like from the matches that you can recall, would you rank this one number one as far as the Brock Kurt one-on-one matches, like over the other ones? Because I think normally everybody kind of says the Iron Man match is the one, or some people even say the SummerSlam 2003 match is better than this WrestleMania match.
No, mate, it's got to be the New Japan one for me. No, I'm joking. That Iron Man match edges it over. I think if this had like a clean finish and Brock hadn't been, not loopy. But I mean, you think about it at that end, when he does land on his head, and apparently it was just because of the size of his neck. That's what stopped him from like breaking his neck or whatever. But you think about that, and thinking about that in today, that match would be over surely. Well, if it was in WWE, I think that match would be over instantaneously, surely, these days, with all the wellness things they've got in place.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And did you guys have a chance to ever check out the Mania documentary? Because obviously there's a lot of play of this match at the end with Lesnar throwing anyone trying to help him off. Apparently he doesn't remember anything about this at all following the slip from that one.
Oof. No, I didn't get a chance to check that out.
I watched that, I want to say it was 2018, man, when I was in math class when I was at university. The class was terrible. So I just sat back and just watched that documentary because I saw somebody tweet it out on Twitter, and I was like, damn, that was like, as I mentioned earlier, it was like you didn't really get a chance to see like a lot of the out of character stuff. So it was like it was just cool for me to kind of see these people out of character and like kind of see like the real life stuff. And of course, like Martin talked about the Brock Lesnar injury, him going backstage and him kind of telling everybody to get the hell up off him, like give him space. I was like, I don't know about y'all, but you got this man telling you to give him some space. I'm backing up. Like,
So what Andrew didn't tell you about that day in math class, Martin, is after he watched that match, he started his very first wrestling podcast called Andrew Thompson's Aftermath. That was for you, John Pollock. That was for you, brother. I know Pollock appreciate them things.
That's a DJ Joe Po joke right there.
And if you don't know, use a mofo.
the greatest Canadian.
That's
Canadian
okay.
export.
It took all show. It took like an hour and a half for us to get here. But that's who should have showed up for the rap battle against John Cena. America's greatest white rapper versus Canada's greatest white rapper. Joe Po versus John Cena. Let's do it.
What was that? WrestleMania. They were in Canada. What was that? WrestleMania 18.
Yeah, 18,
that was WrestleMania 18, right?
Yeah.
John should have did the opening performance. I'm telling you, he should have played somebody to the ring. That'd have been hilarious.
Hey,
You Can't See Me versus JOPO.
I heard Way got bars too, man.
Oh yeah, you need to ask Braden Harrington about that. Those two collaborated on a track of it a number of years.
That's the thing. That would have been their stable. It would have been Braden, Way, and John versus John Cena.
Yeah. What a stable.
I just looked up something. So when I talked about this correction on what I said earlier, I said Edge had a neck injury. He did have a legit neck injury. He wasn't supposed to be in that tag match, but he was supposed to be on the WrestleMania card. But he suffered a legit neck injury a month before literally probably like 5 weeks before WrestleMania. So he had to have neck surgery, and then he didn't come back until like March 2004. So yeah, Edge was supposed to be on this WrestleMania card.
Where do you think? Where does this rank? As I noted at the start, it's like it feels like an underrated WrestleMania. When everyone talks about WrestleManias from this early 2000s time period, everyone talks about 17. But I mean, Nate, where does this rank as a WrestleMania for you?
I think it's a really strong WrestleMania. Like I wouldn't say it's top 5. Like it's not that good. I think any card that has a Nathan Jones or A-Train Big Show Undertaker match, like it can't be in the top 5. It just can't be. But I think like it's one of the better WrestleManias of this time period, like you said, Martin. And I would put it, I put it maybe like low, like in the low top 10s or mid like the teens, somewhere in that range. Like it's a solid show for its time, and I think that like. The whole card doesn't work for me, but Lesnar Angle, Rock Austin, and Hogan McMahon, surprisingly, along with Jericho and Michaels, like they all work for me. And I think had they done the right thing in the Booker T Triple H match, this would be an easy top 10 card for me.
Yeah.
But because they had that booking decision, like it just left a bad taste in my mouth. So I'd probably put this, 13, 14, like somewhere in that range.
Andrew, where do you rank it?
Any WrestleMania card with Hogan on it at the bottom of the barrel from now. But no, this was like you said, it was a really really underrated WrestleMania. I'm gonna say I definitely think it's in the top 10 WrestleManias of all time. I'd probably say 9 or 10 actually, or you could make a case for 8. But I definitely think it was a real solid WrestleMania from top to bottom. And even the Nathan Jones thing, like Nate said, we could probably let Nathan Jones go for a little bit, because I don't think he wasn't even in the match for the most part. Like he came in at the end and did like a spinning heel kick, and then that was it. And then he quit a couple months later. But I respect him for his decision. But like, where would you put this WrestleMania at, Martin, as far as like some of the best WrestleManias of all time?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely top 10. Maybe, I don't know, I'd maybe have it higher than you guys, maybe around a 6 or a 5. But yeah, it's definitely up there for me. I think a lot of WrestleManias have got a bit of crap on them, haven't they? And then they split it around with good stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So just to wrap up, any final thoughts about this time period, this show, or anything before we get into the plugs, of course, that you wanted to get out there?
Whew. I mean, how much time you got? But yeah, this was like, here's the thing. I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna take this time right now, Martin, and I'm gonna do what Triple H should have done back in 2003, and I'm gonna put over the young talent, and show some love to you and Andrew, because I feel like this is gonna be a good show, man. Like, granted, for the listeners out there, every show probably won't be as long as this show, Because I feel like we're getting close to like 2.5, 3 hours. So like as long as the damn WrestleMania itself. So like every show that Andrew and Martin bring to y'all probably won't be this long. But yeah, this is gonna be a fun show, man, and a good addition to the rest of the post wrestling family. So it's been cool, man, being the test subject here for you brothers, and putting a little sizzle on this steak to get this thing started.
Oh, Nate, that means so much coming from you. Obviously, huge honor to have you on here. I've been listening to you for years, so yeah, massive honor having you on this debut show. Yeah, really appreciate you coming on.
No problem, fellas. Again, like Martin, I appreciate you, and of course my podcast nephew Andrew, who you can hear on the Kings of Sport Patreon. Got to get them plugs out there. Like the Miller Lite girls, I gotta sell what I'm here for. Check out the Kings of Sport Patreon. $5 gets you in the door. When is the show supposed to come out, fellas?
It's coming out on Friday.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you'll still have about a week or so, because everybody that signs up for the Kings of Sport Patreon in the month of September, we're taking all of that money and we're donating it to 3 charities: the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, the Jackie Robinson Foundation, and the American Cancer Society. And we're doing that in honor of Chadwick Boseman, who passed away last month. So we are any new sign-ups to the Patreon for the month of September, we are taking that money and putting it towards those charities to honor the King of Wakanda. So check out the Patreon, patreon.com/KingsSport. You can check me out on the Rocky Maivia Picture Show right here on Post Wrestling. Cop that T-shirt, fam. That Rocky Maivia, that hot fit right now, Andrew. I know you probably got one because that's what's hot in DC. That's what's hot in DC right now. That Rocky Maivia fit. You can get that at the Post Wrestling store. You can check me out on the Kings of Sport. You can check me out on the Black Lightning podcast. You can check me out on Place to Be Nation's Main Event. Like, I'm on a bunch of shows, but you can check me out. Like, if you want to know where you can get all that information at, just go to Twitter at @8 MOZIK at Nate Mosaic. And yeah, like this was fun, fellas. I feel like y'all gonna make it someday. Like I'm not gonna be up here saying like Andrew, you can't make it. People like you and Martin don't make good podcasts. People like you and Martin can't get ahead in the podcast world. I'm not gonna bring that energy to your show. So I'm just gonna wish y'all the best.
Oh, we appreciate it. Andrew, any plugs before we head out of here?
Man, firstly, go support Uncle Nate, man. So that's my good man right there. And I also want to give I also got to show some special love, of course, to Martin and both Benno for the British Wrestling Experience, which this podcast is going to be a part of this, a part of their feed. It's going to be they always cover the hot topics, especially going on in the British wrestling scene right now, especially everything that's going on. So I think they've done a phenomenal job on that. So I just wanted to praise the both of you for that. Good job on that, fellas. And then for myself, you can just follow me, 80 Thompson on Twitter, and then 80 Thompson __ on Twitter. Check out the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel, of course, and then you can check out all my written work on the Post Wrestling site.
We still waiting on that hot Andrew DJ Jopo interview. So Brother Pollock, what was your inspiration when you were jumping through the forest in those wild Canadian woods in your music video? John is gonna kill both of us when he hears this. We appreciate you, Brother Pollock.
It's all love, John.
It's all love.
But yeah, easily some of the most comprehensive reporting out there. So yeah, hats off to you, Andrew, and some cracking.
Yeah, I don't know, like the post listeners out there. I don't know if you're a member of the Post Wrestling forum, but you seen the way this brother writes those reports. Like it make my hands hurt just reading them from all the typing that Andrew Thompson got to do on some of these reports, Martin. So yeah, like they're Andrew is a valued member of the Post Wrestling community, as are you, my brother. So I'm glad that y'all are letting your forces combine like Captain Planet and bringing this to the people.
It was when Martin asked me. They asked me to be on what was that show we reviewed for the British Wrestling Experience? With me, you, and James and
UK Rampage '92.
That was the one that brought us together, man. Because that was hilarious, bro. Because like the one thing I like about that is like the subtle subtitle jazz back and forth that we was doing about me not being born when that show happened. It was hilarious. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and and also go check that out on Post Wrestling. You can also go check out when me, Nate, and Mr. Chris Ely dissected Hulk Hogan on the Kings of Sport Patreon, because that was hilarious.
Yeah, the Nubian wrestling advocates. We probably might have to do another episode here like in the next month or so, because we hadn't done that one in a while.
Yeah, no doubt.
All the links will be in the show notes, and of course, all roads lead to postwrestling.com. And myself and Benno will be back with your new monthly BWE on the 8th of October, and then the next episode of this show will be on the 22nd of October, just trying to keep ahead of all that new scheduling. But thanks for everyone for listening. Thanks, of course, to the always brilliant Nate Milton and
yes, sir.
Andrew Thompson.
Uncle Nate. Uncle Nate. Yes, sir.
And we will be back on the 8th of October, and we'll catch you then.